back to another episode of Collector's Quest. I'm Tyler here with Johnny. Johnny, what's going on?
You know, Tyler, I'm living my best life right now. How about you?
You told me you're at like a overly long kid's birthday today. That doesn't sound like your best life.
I don't give a shit about that, Tyler. Do you know what it is?
Halloween?
It's another Halloween episode, baby. We are in the thick of it.
You sent me the Target Halloween birds, Johnny.
I did.
And I saw...
You immediately sent me a message that said, I hate these. Really not. Oh, thanks. I got those for Ada mainly, but I'm glad you guys hate them.
I looked online and I noticed the reviews for them. They were like, it's like all 5-star reviews because people love these birds. And then I saw like a few 1-stars. I'm like, who could give 1 star to these cute little cheap birds? And they have mouths. So they have a beak and then they have the mouth. So they turned the beak into a nose, like they're all Frosty the Snowman. And I saw like, you know, just like a couple 1-star reviews and like hundreds of people reviewing these stupid birds. And I'm like, wow, these guys are real nitpicky. And then you sent us all of them because you just really wanted us to have these birds because we love birds. And then me and Ada look at them and she's just like, I hate the mouths. And she's right. She's
the
right.
mouth is part of the costume.
No, it ruins all the cuteness. The cuteness is the lack of features on the bird. It's just the 2 little beady eyes and a little beak, and you add a stupid mouth, and it really makes it look stupid.
All right. Well, please return them. Glad we did this.
Yep. Not returning them. Stop buying things from me without asking, unless you want to send like Patagonia sun hoodies.
Also, I sent it to your wife, not to you.
Okay.
Please return them. Go buy her a Google gift card or whatever so she can play Pokemon Go and not feel bad about it.
No, we still like birds. Just telling
you. No, you don't. You just told me and everyone else you hate them. You said this to me in the chat too. You're like, "No, we like them." No, you don't. Did you hear anything that just fell out of your mouth?
Ideally I wouldn't have a mouth. I would just have a beak.
Shut up, please, for the love of God. I wish you didn't have a mouth right now, too. Anyways, it's Halloween. You got some birds you hate. I'm so sorry.
Are we going to have to do more stupid Halloween-themed episodes?
You might have to after this. The morale will continue. I messed up the quote. Halloween episodes will continue until morale improves.
Johnny, what are we talking about? Are we identifying the set of Johnny-approved Halloween games on the greatest console to ever exist, the Nintendo Entertainment System?
Yes, we are. But I want to get into the line of logic here first. How we arrived at this. Hold on 1 second. Excuse me. I'm so sorry. That was gross. I want to get into the line of logic before we fully get into it. I get asked a lot of time about what my criteria is. So I think about this and I'm always like, no, that doesn't count. People are like, well, why doesn't it count? And then I have like a reason but I have to articulate. And what I wanted to be able to do was articulate that on scale against anything that comes up. So someone could basically ask me any game. I could look at my criteria and I could put it through its paces and figure it out. But how would I arrive at the NES set? Well, backtracking just a little bit to that, I looked at our Halloween episodes, Tyler, and I was like, these are great for me because one of the things you said, you're like, yeah, that's just like you being insane about all of your Halloween stuff. And I was like, yeah, I don't really care about that. These episodes are pretty much for me. And I'm like, that is true. But if part of what we do here is like give a list of things and tell people how to collect something, I was like, if I am just like a scatterbrain reaching into the far reaches of anything Halloween. I'm out in Japan. I'm in the deepest corners of Europe, looking up anything I can find. But normal people, Tyler, who also enjoy Halloween are like, well, can you just tell me what the stupid games on the NES are that are like Halloween? And like, could you tell me on the Genesis? And could you tell me on the Sega Saturn? And I was like, I should be able to do that. That is something we have never actually articulated. So I wanted to create an episode probably once a year where it's so you want to collect and then give the system and we go through them. Sometimes it'll be a smaller system and we can do more, but the NES has a lot of games. And some that are, I don't know how to describe it, like soupier because games were less refined on the NES. developers were just throwing anything at the wall that they thought would stick. They're like, okay, monsters and aliens, that makes sense. I call some of them, like, as a pun, monster mash. Like, oh, it's got Frankenstein and it's got this other universal monster and a Dracula, but it's also got a Chinese hopping vampire. And these things don't necessarily make sense, but they're just like, the game needs monsters. Castlevania is a great example. They're like, okay, we've got Frankenstein and then put Medusa heads in there. You're like, just like, how did we get to Greek mythology over here? And they're just like, mash monsters in there because this is a game about monsters. So we're just doing that. And so, yeah, I wanted to like kind of clean that up, give a criteria, also be able to talk to people, normal people, reasonable people about what games are on the set and whether I actually consider them or not. So that's how we arrived at all of this.
You chose me as the normal, reasonable person to talk to about this.
Well, I think you are more normal when it comes to like what's Halloween, and I think you are a good resource to poke holes in any of my logic and to fight me about things that I may not be considering, which is what I want, because I want to create a criteria that is consistent, easy to understand, and holds up. It holds up to scrutiny. If you don't want those things, yes, sometimes I just like to espouse, this is the Halloween game. Go buy this. This is the thing. Like, sure. But it would be nice if that held up to scrutiny once in a while as well.
All right.
I think that's fair.
I'll say it is a little interesting for video games because, especially when you get into simpler video games, where we're talking like Atari or NES, like on their surface, a lot of these games are just like action platformers or arcade games.
Yes.
Whereas if you look at like movies, you can go back to the 1920s and the genre of horror is already like pretty defined. You can really point out this counts as a horror movie, this doesn't count as a horror movie. And I guess there's more stuff on the edge with games because if you talk about the genre of horror, you immediately think of like Silent Hill, Resident Evil, whatever, the Evil Within, like games like that you don't think of like Castlevania as being a horror game because it's not a horror game.
No, it's not. And so that's part of why I created the criteria that kind of holds these things. And it's like why I call it like usually collecting Halloween games, but there are other elements to that. So I have these 3 pillars. And it can have horror elements, spooky elements, or Halloween elements. And I kind of define those and try to make those reasonable. And just because it has one of those things, just because it's got a monster in it, does not make it a Halloween game. Like most games have monsters in them.
Pokemon actually has the most monsters of any game. And all the kids coming to your house on Halloween are going to be dressed as Pokemon. So you're really going to have to sell me that Pokemon is not a Halloween game.
It's not a Halloween game. Just kids dressing up at it. Licensed costumes do not mean it's a horror game. It's not horror. It's not spooky. And like, sure, what does it get? 1 point because they have Halloween costumes in it? If it doesn't achieve, I gave this a point scale. I'm not going to like fully go into all the points. You can see them, but know that I scored every single game and gave it a point value. And if it didn't across all 3 of these categories at least achieve a 3, it doesn't count. And I should say the categories are scored, each 3 categories is scored 1 to 3. So basically, light, moderate, strong, and then there's also a 0 in there because it can be absolutely does not rank, don't count this.
Johnny, horror, spooky, and Halloween are all the same thing.
They're not.
So just to be clear, we have 3 categories here. The categories are horror, spooky, and Halloween. And I want you to describe the difference between these 3 categories.
Tyler, there are 3 distinct categories. They're not the same. And you want me to tell you about them?
Yes.
Okay. So there are key elements, and they don't necessarily overlap, but some of them do. So horror specifically deals with gore or violence, not just monsters, but the physical threat of monsters, shocks and jump scares. There has to be some amount of fear of pain or death or psychological fears. Psychological horror is part of it. Sometimes grotesquerie can be an aspect of it. Body horror getting like weird. Heavy levels of dread and nihilism. Supernatural forces that are bent towards evil or malicious purposes. Like they have to have violent intent, essentially. forbidden knowledge. So think Cthulhu. Also, sometimes in the taboo, we can, with like forbidden knowledge, we can go into taboo. So like cannibalism, occult rituals, dark magic, kind of stuff like that.
End the taboo on cannibalism. I'm just gonna say, guys, it's 2020s. Let's end the taboo on cannibalism.
No, let's not. No thanks. And your favorite part of horror, and you know this is something unique to horror, hopeless or tragic endings. The bleakest resolutions.
What NES games have this besides Sweet Home?
This is me. So this is not just specific to NES. This is me trying to create a broader framework. I want it to apply everywhere, but I do have to consider these. Like Friday the 13th actually fits into it a little bit. If we were going to talk about NES games, it's like you and your friends are dead, right?
Sure.
The end screen. It's just like, oh shit. Like, yes, you can get past that, but that one game over screen hits a button for that and applies. So, that makes sense?
Okay, so now, horror is everything I like about horror. Great. All right.
Yes,
now, what
I just described. Yes, I just described horror, but
what
Halloween.
Is spooky though?
You want okay? I'll go to spooky next. So spooky is different. So this is about more. It's more atmospheric. It is supernatural, but not necessarily with like malicious intent. So think of like friendlier ghosts or just ghosts that actually exist, but they're not necessarily threatening. More mood oriented. It's not necessarily about outright terror. So key elements are the atmosphere and the setting, the unseen or the unknown, tension, usually psychological, paranoia, doubt, slow burn, suspense, a lot of isolation.
That could be horror though.
Yes, some of these crossover, but I'm saying that these are more distinctly spooky. A lot of horror is spooky, yeah?
But if horror is okay. All right,
but I'm saying
going.
like these are the parts, these are the things that make something spooky versus this is the things that make it horror. But spooky horror exists. It's not, like I said, it's a Venn diagram with a lot of overlap. Okay. Unpredictability, that's also in horror. Spooky, and this one I like for spooky a lot, and it's the horror of ordinary situations. So like you're in a house, you're not sure. Like everything feels normal, but there's a bunch of relatable fears. You'll hear a strange noise. Yes, that's horror. Just like being in a space by yourself, feeling vulnerable, like that kind of tension that's brought from that. Yes, horror incorporates that. They make it spooky. Then they bring the violence. But in a spooky movie could create that tension, but never bring violence. Is that making sense? Does that sound reasonable?
I'm going to keep going, and I'm going to quiz you at the end here.
Okay. And then unresolved mystery, a lot of open endings, or mysteries that deepen the questions. Like you could get an ending where it just leads you down a deeper road. Again, a little bit more focused to the supernatural here, not necessarily horror, like less Jason, more I'm unsure what happened, haunted mansion. Okay. Because yes, a haunted mansion movie could be horror. But it may not have a bunch of terrifying, super violent scenes. It's spookier than it is horror. If horror, I think, is predicated on the violence, and spooky is more predicated on the atmosphere.
But then you're saying that like the concept of psychological horror is not horror, it's in spooky.
It crosses over and is in both, but how the psychological horror is enacted is different. So if you have someone who is torturing you and inflicting psychological horror upon you, that leans more to horror. If it is the atmosphere or yourself developing that through extreme amounts of dread, it lends more towards spooky. Or like ghost or the unseen supernatural kind of creating that fear.
All right, I'm trying to come up with the most relatable example here. And I'm not doing a good job, I know. But
okay.
10 Cloverfield Lane. That would be a very spooky movie that doesn't have a lot of violence in it.
Yeah. I think we talked about this before. And yeah, it is kind of spooky and it's unsettling. And there's a lot of tension that's built in there. Though there is a man in it, right, who's creating that tension, and he's very real. And he seems like the antagonist of the movie, and really, he is not. But I think parts of that movie are spooky, and parts of it are terror or horror, because there is still a man kind of keeping them captive. And that's actively, like, it creates like a Saw-like environment in that sense. You're like, this man has us locked up in his weird funhouse. And, really it's aliens. So that messes everything up.
All right, I need a supernatural movie that's not super violent then. So Paranormal Activity, there's really no violence in that movie, right?
I haven't seen Paranormal Activity.
You haven't seen Paranormal Activity?
I think I saw the first one, but they made a bunch of them, so I haven't seen all of them.
They sure did.
Yeah.
But I mean, just take the concept of Paranormal Activity. If it's just a webcam panning around a house and like a little bit of like whoop, like a little bit of supernatural happens every once in a while.
Here, let's do this. Most of the Blair Witch is just spooky.
So I don't want most of, because that's like if there was nothing violent in the Blair Witch though, that's still horror.
But that's why there's 3 pillars, because like I said, they're not one thing or the other. It's like you got more points in this, so you're more this than that. I think the Blair Witch is more spooky than it is horror. I think it creeps you out, and it made everyone really uneasy when they watched it, but it wasn't like, oh my God, it's not the same thing as Friday the 13th. You're just not clawed hand in a bathtub and tearing guts out and, fountain spray of blood up to the ceiling.
All right. So regardless of the names of your categories, I understand the categories. I'm going to go horror means, violent, malicious, malevolent, disgusting. Yeah. And then spooky can be
more atmospheric driven, more
atmospheric. Casper the Friendly Ghost, Sabrina the Teenage Witch.
Yes. Exactly. So spooky can lend itself to not being even a horror movie. It can be like Paranorman is. Did you ever see Paranorman?
I have not seen Paranorman.
You haven't seen Paranorman?
You're the one who said you haven't seen Paranormal Activity, and you're gonna get me on Paranorman? Halloween
is very on the nose, right? It's different. It can contain all of those. Like Trick or Treat would be Halloween, right? Like you get that there's pumpkins and kids in costumes and and it's on Halloween. That's Halloween. So it is as on the nose as it sounds. Okay, so Halloween,
if I could relate it to something I find in the Walmart Halloween aisle, is that what makes it Halloween? Pumpkins, black cats, witches.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Especially if it's on Halloween, like Spirit Halloween, that horror movie. Like, come on, yes, it's a horror movie, but it's getting points in Halloween. They, as I said, they all kind of intersect. There is the Haunted Mansion movies, right? Those get some Halloween, those get a couple of points, but mainly it's spooky, but it's not really violent. So they, again, all these things kind of cascade into each other. But yes, key elements are costumes and dressing up, taking place on or near Halloween, like definite fall settings. If there's a bunch of autumn leaves on the ground, they're drumming up that 'tis the season. Halloween parties or festivals. Think Hocus Pocus. Did you ever see this movie? I feel like I have to ask.
Yeah, I've seen Hocus Pocus.
Okay, so Hocus Pocus, it is a little bit spooky, but it's definitely Halloween, right? Like the Sanderson sisters are out. It's Halloween. You're lighting a black candle. All this stuff. It has elements that are crossing over. They can be a little bit scary. Like all this stuff can be scary, and that's fine. They all have scary elements, but that's part of it. Pumpkins, obviously, if they put like a bunch of pumpkins on the ground. Witches, ghosts, and magical elements, like key frameworks for Halloween. Like these, like tropey Halloween stuff, like you said, witches, black cats, yes. Even Jason and Freddy a little bit, because they are so synonymous with Halloween costumes now. Culturally, they've just been appropriated as Halloween. So, and I had to kind of think through that a little bit. But Friday the 13th, right? I feel is a summer horror and doesn't always hit Halloween-y for me, even though it is a slasher and it's horror and it's all those things. but like it takes place in the summer, I would want to watch it there. But because people have pushed it so onto Halloween as a costume and a thing that is Halloween, it's just been amplified by the culture as being Halloween, and therefore it resonates there.
So that's what I was just about to ask you, because if we're talking about like, Walmart traditional Halloween stuff, I feel like the movie Halloween might not even qualify as fully Halloween, because it's mostly just a slasher with like a background. Like there's a small background story to Michael Myers that his origin story takes place on Halloween. But other than it's not like a spooky Black Cat's pumpkin type of movie. It's just
no, but again, it's called Halloween. It does take place on Halloween. There are pumpkins, and it's happening on Halloween night. There's kids in costumes, trick or treating. All that's right there. So it is hitting all those. Okay,
Halloween this is notes. The Die Hard argument. Then does taking place on Halloween alone make it a Halloween thing?
It gives it points in the Halloween category. And that's why there had to be a point system. But also it's a slasher and there's violent murder, so it gets points in horror. And that's why I have to create a total score to look and see whether it qualifies.
All right. I'm going to stick a finger in this and come back to it later.
Okay. And then, again, some Halloween tends to be a little bit more family friendly. The supernatural elements can be in there, but they tend to be more playful. The villains tend to be more mischievous. Less like, I'm going to kill you, a lot more comic misunderstanding. The villain is like, oh, it's not really a villain. It was just this misunderstanding all along. Like, kind of that kind of more for kids in that setting. And a lot of times there's this weird element of Halloween is that there is a race against time. Like something has to happen before Halloween ends or before person A gets to point B, or the magic ends, or someone will be hurt. There is always like this kind of internal clock to a lot of Halloween movies. I feel that was my last category. I feel pretty good about that, but I could be argued out of it, I think. Anyways, these are the elements that I said make up these things. And like there are some things that are like non-overlapping and there's some overlapping, and I did try to categorize where they overlap, but Tyler, I have like a 9-page document.
Yeah, you do. I know. Yeah,
like trying to explain this to myself and make sure my rationale fits. So if you were wondering how dedicated I am to this kind of nonsense, this is how, what have I spent like 30 minutes talking about this? This is the worst episode opener ever.
I feel like if we're talking about Halloween games, shouldn't the Halloween category really be all that matters?
No.
Okay.
Because of this. It's not necessarily which games are Halloween. It's which games would be fun to play on Halloween, given that I know that it's not just my criteria, right? I have to accept the criteria of others outside of me a little bit and say, some people really like slashers, right? They want their Friday the 13th and they want it for Halloween. So they want to play these games. They want to watch horror movies on Halloween. They want games that kind of represent this. And I understand October is the season for it. They call it spooky season, blah, blah, blah. All the stuff, all the tropes they throw onto it. And all this stuff fits in there. So as a broader calculus, here is the criteria that kind of fits these good for the Halloween season. Now, if you said, hey, Johnny, which is specifically the best Halloween game? Which games got a 3 in the Halloween category? I could tell you that.
All right. Let me give an example here. That's not an NES to start us out, Johnny. Yeah. Jack Bros would be 0 out of 10 for horror, 0 out of 10 for spooky. 2 out of 10 for Halloween. I feel like 3 out of 3 for Halloween. Jack Bros is a Halloween game.
Why do you think it gets a 0 in horror?
What is horrific about Jack Bros? It's like a maze game.
What is the components of the maze? What's happening in the maze?
You think I remember like the graphics of Jack Bros or any Virtual Boy game? It's like, it was like Red. It's like a top-down maze game. I don't even remember if you shoot in Jack Bros. It's been a long time since I played Jack Bros. But what are you arguing here? That there's something horrific about the things you shoot?
Well, Jack Skellington does like have a knife. It happens on Halloween. There's pumpkins. Like I think it's scoring, right? I think
But it's
one.
not
I think
scoring
it
on the horror scale. There's no tension
I
in
think
Jack Bros. It's not spooky.
I think it probably. Well, I think a dude with a pumpkin head wielding a knife is a little bit scary.
All right.
You,
All right, you're right.
Like
So it's not
I'm
a
not
0.
giving it like. I'm not giving it a 3. I'm scoring that lightly. Like that's probably like a 1. And like a lot of these I did like full read ups. Watched more. If I didn't remember the game immediately, like some of these games, like Eight Eyes, we'll get into. Like I hadn't played Eight Eyes in probably 35 years or something, so I really had to go refresh myself on Eight Eyes. But I was like, does that count? I always feel like in my head it doesn't really count, but like let me go re-examine because a lot of people will cram anything into there. And this was part of my impetus. Like I watched a couple of videos where people were like, here's all the Halloween games, and I was just like, man, you will literally throw anything into this. If you will throw everything in the pool, then nothing. There's no distinction. There's no nuance, and I would like to create some.
All right, so, you want to do this? Yeah. You put this alphabetically. You don't want to do this chronologically, Johnny?
We can do it chronologically. I forgot to sort it chronologically, but I can work on that. I can try to make it chronological for you.
Have the games get cooler over time.
Yeah. Anyways, you want this chronologically?
Only if you want it chronologically.
You tell me how you want it.
All right, just do Eight Eyes, whatever. I don't care.
Okay. Eight Eyes by Taxon came out in 1990 in January. And no, I think it has some spooky elements. It's got eerie locations, like castles and caverns and things like that. And you go through some portals, and it's a little mad scientist-y. But overall, I think it just doesn't rate. And this is one of the games I left on here because I wanted to take it off. Like people keep trying to tell me that this one counts. And I love the little emblems you put in the document. I just noticed them. Yeah. It just doesn't rate for me. It doesn't have enough going for it. It doesn't rate in Halloween. This is a game that is not a Halloween game.
You're a guy exploring like a mansion or something. I don't know. I haven't played it.
It's like a castle.
It's like Castlevania. It's like exactly looks like Castlevania.
It tries to be, but it does not measure up. And I think it fails and has enough elements that it doesn't quite get there for me. It's not like really horror. Like there's no horror in it. There's Halloween.
No horror in it?
Not really. Like, I mean, you could push and give it like maybe a 1 and like get it to a 3, but like I got in spooky at like a 2, and I felt like that was being generous.
All right. Fine. I'm there with you. So no to Eight Eyes. Get off our list forever.
Yeah. I brought it up as one I wanted to kind of be like, nah, I don't really count. But I also wanted to illustrate how close I think it is. So this is like, it's very close. Like you could tell me on your personal list, like, Johnny, I think that's crazy. You just disqualified Eight Eyes, which I know is definitely rating at least in horror and a little in spooky. So that's enough Halloween for me. And that's fine. But this is the criteria as I saw it. Again, I'm also willing to argue the points and hear other arguments. I'm not like, again, I have played, I think, every single game on this list and beaten most of them. But some of them, it has been a very long time. So, feel free if my memory doesn't hold exactly to challenge me or fight me if I didn't get all the details right. Fair? And that goes for our audience. I'm not just talking to Tyler here. Like, if you hear some of this and you're like, Johnny, you're crazy, let me know. That's fine. I got into some fight on TikTok earlier. Some guy was like, he's like, oh, you think Castlevania Symphony of the Night's the best PlayStation game? I was like, yeah, I do. And I also think it's the best Castlevania game. Feel free to fight me. That's what I said in the video. And then he's like, why are you mad, bro? I'm like, I literally told you to come fight me. Like, what? Because I responded to him assertively. He was like,
I also wanted to call you out for calling Symphony of the Night the best PlayStation game, but instead I called you out for calling the American version better than the Japanese version.
I didn't call it out as a better version than the Japanese version. In fact, I said the two versions that are most collectible are the American PS1 Black Label copy and the Sega Saturn copy, which is Japanese. I said you should probably buy the Japanese one, but this one is also good. These are the only two.
Is the Japanese one really like $150 for Symphony of the Night? Let's get off topic here.
Yes, it is.
Oh my God. Man, I should get that.
Yeah, it's great. Like, yeah, I mean, it's been like over $100 for a long time. It hasn't really moved that much.
Johnny, let's keep going down our NES games. We haven't even got to one Halloween game that counts.
Nightmare on Elm Street. It's got horror elements. It can be a little bit spooky. I'm a little soft. I was maybe a little too generous on the spooky score. But yeah, I think this game counts. Obviously, it's Nightmare on Elm Street. What do you want?
You put a 1 for Halloween here. Like,
Yes.
What are you talking about? Like, I feel like Freddy Krueger is almost synonymous with Halloween. Like, if Michael Myers is literally synonymous with Halloween, like Freddy Krueger is like 1 or 2 below him.
But what are the as discussed? What are the Halloween elements?
I don't know. Bats that are flying with skeleton heads, and the fact that it has Freddy Krueger in it.
But Freddy Krueger is the Halloween element. He gets the 1. He is that 1 point.
That's like a 3 by default, but also all the enemies are like spooky skeletons.
No, one element
they're horror skeletons.
One element doesn't make it the whole category. Twilight is not a horror movie, and it is not a horror game because there's vampires in it.
But everything in this game is like a Halloween. It's like Castlevania almost. It's like a bunch of like zombies and skeletons.
But that
and stuff.
I scored for horror because the intent of the game is to be horror. It is not to be Halloween. There's not a bunch of pumpkins laying around. There's not a bunch of kids in costume. It's not Halloween night. It's not like blending
I looked up when
that
the
is
movie
Halloween.
came out, and it was like November 7th or something. If it came out like October 25th, I would have just it's a 3 for Halloween. But all right, fine.
But horror movies, that's what I'm saying.
You're saying
horror
it
movies,
counts though.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
Definitely counts. Like, you can look at the total score. If it's over 3, it counts. Most everything on this list counts. I started with 8 Eyes and wanted to keep it there because I was particularly discounting it. Everything else pretty much here we're going to discount except for games that I will bring up specifically. Say, people say this one, and I'm not counting it, and here's why.
Did you make a list of the ones that count somewhere, or should I start keeping track?
This is any one that's in pink doesn't count. The rest of them all count.
Oh, okay. Oh, I didn't realize this many are going to count.
Yes.
Neat.
And then there's a list underneath here that should all be, that's like all pink. It says not a good fit. See on the dock?
All right.
Okay. Makes sense?
Let's keep going. All right. Nightmare on Elm Street.
So Addams Family, I'm going to just lump these 3 together. Addams Family, Pugsley's Scavenger Hunt, and Fester's Quest. These all count. This came out in 1990, 1992, and 1989 for Fester's Quest. And these are all pretty much rate for being Halloween-ish. And again, part of it is culturally they are of the element of Halloween. They are something that is staple culturally to Halloween via what we've developed here. Also, it's just a good time to point out that there's an extreme Western bias in this. Also, we're talking about Halloween as it appears to the United States and probably Canada, maybe some other places, but I know like 100% this is all my Western bias. And so I don't want people being like, oh, well, you don't understand. Yeah, look, I get that. I'm understanding there's bias. I've just put that giant disclaimer out there. So don't at me on that. Cool.
All right.
Any questions about that?
No, I think Addams Family clearly all goes in.
Okay. Attack of the Killer Tomatoes just barely squeaks in. It's B, it's camp. It kind of, the game, like the other thing is sometimes you have to separate the game itself from the movie, which is a little bit hard because they don't necessarily do the same things, especially on NES where they couldn't lean as hard into horror as they wanted to due to limitations and like Nintendo. But Attack of the Killer Tomatoes counts. It's not that horrible. I put it more squarely in Halloween, but yeah, it counts. Attack of the Killer Tomatoes counts.
What about it is Halloween? I get the horror elements.
Yeah.
It's just horrible enough that it's Halloween? Oh, okay. Well, one of the bosses is a witch playing an organ. All right, let's go with, let's say yes.
Yeah,
Man,
that's why. Attack of the Killer, it's a strange game. Also, it's based, I think, a little bit off the animated series. And that's why I said the movie, that's why I particularly said the movie and the game aren't exactly the same thing. They lean into some different stuff. So,
yeah, I was about to say, I literally watched this movie on Halloween. this game does not look like the movie at all. I've not played Attack
No.
of the Killer Tomatoes. It looks kind of
No, it sure doesn't. So yeah, I think I think it's a very fun game. It's got a fun cover. I like this red and green box. It's very lovely. What we didn't do is give prices for any of this, but you guys are just sorry. We're not a price episode this time around. Okay. Beetlejuice. Yeah, it counts. Okay. Beetlejuice. Strong. It's got some spooky vibes.
Counts.
It's Halloween. Also some bias on my part. Bram Stoker's Dracula. Obviously, strong horror game. Came out in 1993 by Sony ImageSoft.
Second game that's really a pinball machine. All right.
Yeah. I mean, the pinball machine counts too.
Oh, and third game, Nightmare on Elm Street has a pinball machine too. And Addams Family and Bram Stoker's Dracula.
Yeah, a lot of these... man, do you know why I can't collect Halloween pinball machines? Because it would be so many.
Yeah. You should get... Oh, man, that would be such a cool collection, though, Johnny.
It would... Dude, look...
Think of all of them lined
if I was
up
so
like
rich,
that.
If I was so rich, that would be... And I had the space, really. Like, man, I would have so many. Anyways, the Castlevanias. Castlevania 1, 2, and 3. These are by Konami. 1987, 1988, and 1990. Yes, these are all strong contenders. They have horror elements in them. They are spooky, and they are Halloween-y. So, but they're also a little ridiculous that they have Medusa heads in them.
They have all the Universal Halloween monsters. I guess the Universal monsters kind of have become the Halloween monsters.
Yes.
Do those get more clout than like Pikachu? Because they're like the
Yes.
Universal monsters? Okay.
Yeah, because they are synonymous with Halloween and Pikachu is not.
All right. I mean, I don't know. I'm going to see some Pikachus on Halloween night. I guarantee it.
You definitely are. My son might be one of them. Chiller. You ever heard of Chiller? 1990? This might be one of the stronger ones that like gets the classification for horror.
Yeah, this is probably the most horrific game on NES. I will say that. It's probably the only game where you decapitate someone in real time and then shoot up their corpse.
Yeah.
Let alone all the other shit that's in Chiller. Chiller's so fucked up. I love it.
I almost put this as a 4, but I didn't want to break the scale.
Okay, yeah.
For horror. So...
What a game. How did this game get released? Like, if there was ever a game where, like, the parents should have been outraged compared to, like, all the Dungeons and Dragons bullshit that they actually get outraged at, it should have been Chiller.
Yeah. 100%. Man, I always do this. The next game, this is the game... I probably already talked about Portals on 8 Eyes, and it's not 8 Eyes that has Portals. It's Dr. Chaos. Fucking Dr. Chaos. This game, I don't know why this game and 8 Eyes feel exactly the same to me. They are not. They're very different games. Dr. Chaos is more Goonies than Castlevania. But this one is, this one ranks. This one made it on the list. Disagree?
So, how much does Dr. Chaos have that 8 Eyes doesn't?
Dr. Chaos is definitely in a haunted mansion. He is definitely a mad scientist.
Does 8 Eyes take place in a haunted mansion?
No, it takes place in like a castle and some caverns.
Okay. It's really hard to tell
because it looks castle. It's just
looks
a castle.
Exactly like Castlevania. It is so hard to separate 8 Eyes from Castlevania and just be like, oh, I'm in a spooky castle because it's got those staircases.
Imagine, you know what 8 Eyes is? Imagine if Castlevania wasn't horror.
I'm mixing it up with the Nightmare on Elm Street too. Never mind.
And the shitty knife you've got in 8 Eyes, like, man, that what a terrible weapon. Do you even remember having to play that game and like how bad your reach is and like punishing?
All right.
And like, also you come into this mansion to like save your brother who's just like gone missing in this other like dimension full of monsters. Yeah. It's like, you know.
All right, there's enough skeletons and bats and stuff that I'll give you Dr. Chaos. I'll let it squeak in.
Also, fun. Do you know what the subtitle is in Japan? The English, the Anglified subtitle anyways.
I have no idea. What is it?
Hell's Gate. Dr. Chaos Hell's Gate.
All right. Didn't make the game any better, let me tell you.
It sure didn't. Yeah, it's a very medium game, but it counts.
I'm gonna call it a bad game. Sorry.
Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. I don't think that requires too much explanation. It made it, just barely squeaked in. Tell me if you disagree with this. And I did not give it a point for Halloween because I don't feel like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde like wind up being culturally in costumes and like something that kids talk about as much. Like I think once upon a time it used to, but not anymore. I think they fell off.
You think Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde fell off?
From like the cultural a cultural
from
relevance
what, like
standpoint,
1884?
No. Like when I was a kid, like they used to have cartoons that referenced Jekyll and Hyde very specifically in Looney Tunes. I don't think that really happens anymore. Like there was a Looney Tunes special that I think had that for Halloween.
I guess I haven't seen enough cartoons, but okay. I don't know. Have you sat down and read some 19th century literature with your son?
Yes.
Oh, was it Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde?
It was. I actually got a really nice slipcase edition of that I found that's like 75 years old. It was pretty cool. Anyways, doesn't matter. Frankenstein, The Monster Returns, a sequel to Frankenstein. Hooray. This is Bandai 1991. It qualifies. It's Frankenstein.
Yep.
What do you want me to say?
I'm going to say, yeah.
I don't know if people want me to explain what these are. I feel like I explained categories.
I think Frankenstein, we don't really need to explain why it's making the cut. It's Frankenstein.
Okay. I'm like, well, Frankenstein made it. I'm like, should I say more? Because I have a lot of notes. I have so many notes.
You know, Johnny, a lot of people don't know that Frankenstein's the name of the doctor, not the monster.
It is a thing that bothers me that it is, there is a game
they're really showing their chops by naming it Frankenstein the Monster Returns. Like yes. they did their research for this game. They really know what they're talking about here.
It is nice that they got this right at least. So, I mean, well, let's not underrate what a good job they did. Anyways, Tyler, are you ready for me to move on?
Yeah, let's go.
Okay.
That's it.
Friday the 13th. Do you have any qualms to this one making it? Do I need to explain Jason versus V Freddy or anything like that?
No, you did give it a 1 for Halloween, which again, I don't agree with. What did you give? You gave Frankenstein a 2. See, I don't agree with your Halloween rating. We're not like going over all the ratings. That would be really boring. But like Frankenstein and Jason are so...
It is elements of the game lean more towards Halloween than Friday the 13th.
So the elements of the game... Wait, what?
Elements of the game, it gets its points in horror, not in Halloween. It gets the point in horror because it is Friday the 13th, and Friday the 13th...
just the concept of like a guy running around in a hockey mask with a sharp object is so Halloween, though. I know that's an element of horror, but that is an element of horror that has become very associated with Halloween.
Which is why, and that's what I'm saying. Like, and it did that, so Jason became the guy, and it gets 1 point for being that. The rest of it requires other elements in there to get points. It checked one box. It's got to check more. If we were just saying, does this count as a Halloween game? I'd be like, I don't know. It is definitely a horror game and fun to play, but it's like, but would I rate it based on the Halloween category? I would not. Would I rate it because of horror and being a little bit spooky and like the cool NES music and stuff that gets to in it? Yeah, it gets to be all of that. And like the tension of camp is Jason going to run into you? Yeah, like I think it generates a lot of dread actually in this game. So it got a 2 in spooky.
I'm just talking about the Halloween category. I think that Friday the 13th gets a 3. And it's not just because it's a classic licensed horror property, because I don't think like The Thing PlayStation 2 game, I wouldn't consider that Halloween, and that's like one of the most classic horror movies ever. But I think Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday the 13th, Halloween, all these just like get a pass as being like the most iconic Halloween movies. Even if they're not directly related to Halloween. I'm not saying
they're not the most iconic, and they have high scores. These all have high scores. But I'm saying the game unto itself is a separate entity than the rest of the property. Yes, it gets to take elements. of the property and be like, okay, it is the thing, but it is not also the movie. But look, it's got a 6 and the highest score is a 7. So like it's doing it.
You know, Johnny, a lot of people don't know that Frankenstein's monster is actually Mrs. Voorhees.
That's true. Well, she was only Mrs. Voorhees in the first movie.
Yeah, because she gets killed. Oh, Mrs. Voorhees is in the game. I forgot about that. She's like an optional boss.
Yeah. Anyways.
That game's cool.
People are like, oh, he wasn't even Jason until the second movie. It's like, well, he did kill someone, right? The last scene in the
because he's
lake.
at the very end of the first.
Yeah, the very end.
Jump scare.
He did kill someone in that movie. It's like, come on.
That jump scare got me. Don't like
it's a good jump
scares
scare
at the end of movies. I forgot who's on the lake. There's like a kid on the lake, and then Jason comes up from the lake and tips over.
Jumps out of the water.
Yeah,
yeah,
super.
It's a good scene. Yeah, super, super good. Love it. Gargoyles Quest 2. Maybe you're familiar with this.
I'm familiar with it.
It is. Oh God, what's the Red Devil's name?
I don't know his name. Johnny, you know what? I read manual. If there's any amount of thinking in a game, I will absolutely read the manual every time. If I'm going into an action platformer, I'm not reading the manual every time. I don't know the gargoyle's name from Ghosts and Goblins.
Firebrand.
Okay. It's Firebrand, yes.
You didn't know? Yeah.
No,
yeah,
I didn't know that. I'm sorry. I'm not like a Ghosts and Goblins super fan.
Okay. Anyways. Do you want me to lead us back in?
No, this is it. This is the episode.
That's it? That's staying in there? Okay. Well, great. It's all staying in there. Anyways, Firebrand is the little gargoyle from Ghost and Goblins. And he comes up from, I want to say it's like Devil Realm or Demon Realm or something. Anyways, his reward at the end of Gargoyle's Quest is getting to go to Ghost and Goblins. Like, go to the human world. You didn't know this? You didn't know the lore?
No, I don't know the lore. That's great. I've played Gargoyles Quest 1 and 2 and Ghost and Goblins, Super Ghouls and Ghosts, and the new one. And I don't know any of the stuff you're talking about right now. Because you know what you do, Johnny? You like throw stuff like spears at zombies and they explode and then they hit you and your clothes fall off because in Japan, it's funny if your clothes fall off.
Sure
Look
is.
up Galgun 2. It's a real video game.
Yeah. Safe search on. Yeah, it passes mustard. It did it.
You gave it a 0 for Halloween.
Also, I think I just used an acorn. I think I said passes mustard, and I think it's muster because you muster.
It's funnier. I'm gonna cut out you explaining this.
No. Do you know what an acorn is? I'm sure you do, right?
What an acorn is? Egg
corn?
Egg
corn.
corn. What the fuck's an egg corn?
Well, I don't have. That's like an after dark. Remind me to tell you what acorns are versus malaprops and.
Okay.
That's a whole linguistic phenomenon. Anyways.
What did you
an acorn is basically when you say something wrong.
For horror. You give us a 1 for horror? I don't even understand your rating. So I'm agreeing with you on all these, that these count for the Halloween set, but I think your ratings are all over the place.
I think my ratings are internally consistent.
I think that you undervalue a game being consisting of entirely of scary monsters. So like Pokemon is like a bunch of cute monsters, but like Gargoyle's Quest, the entire world is full of not just monsters, but like scary monsters. And you're like, well, that's just one element. That's a 1. When like everything in this game is a scary thing that wants to kill you. And you're playing the devil.
You don't play the devil. You play a little devil.
If you're 8 years old, you're like, oh, this is the cool game where I play the fucking devil. The frickin' devil.
Yeah, like I don't think it leans that hard on horror.
All right.
Like I like that again, the monsters to me aren't enough to make it horror. They just exist. Like, is Gargoyles on the Genesis a Halloween game because they're gargoyles?
No, it doesn't have the vibes that Gargoyles Quest 2 has.
What? It's got big cathedrals and the most evil thing in the world, corporations.
Those are good guy gargoyles.
Oh.
I don't know. Right,
sometimes monsters can be the protagonist.
Quest 2 counts. That's fine.
Anyway, it counts. It gets more. I think it probably could have got a 1 in Halloween. I think that's a mistake. I think I think the monster selection is classically Halloween, and that would count. Anyways, Ghostbusters 1 and 2. This are Activision games from 1988 and 1990. We talked a lot about Ghostbusters games a few years ago and how weird they are and like how many of them there are. Yeah, these ones, they made it. They are
okay.
culturally
All right,
Halloween.
sell me on this. You know what? Let's start with Ghostbusters, a fucking game where you like drive around to buildings and like laser a little ghost up, and then you have to climb a whole bunch of stairs. And then like there's a world map where you play the Ghostbusters logo. Like, all right, we're separating the game from the movie here. Like, what about this is anything?
The monsters get counted for horror because they are ghosts. They're dead and they're violent.
That's spooky. Are they malicious? They're just flying around minding their own business, and then you suck them up.
No, they're malicious. They're malicious. I considered them malicious. If I have that wrong, I'm fine. Like I did that off of just memory. So I thought they were malicious ghosts. If they're not malicious ghosts, I'm happy to move.
They do kill you on the stairs. I don't know if they can kill you in the building segments.
So, I mean, there is imminent threat from the monsters in that game that end your life.
There is a timer element, which you love.
Which gives it a 1 in Halloween, and culturally being very associated with Halloween and the right monster selection got it its 2 in Halloween.
All right. I don't know. I think Ghostbusters is a Halloween movie. I don't know if this counts as a Halloween game. I think all it's got is to go. If this counts as a Halloween game, every game with a ghost counts as a Halloween game.
I mean, it that's not true. And that's why there had to be other elements. And look, it only qualified, like, if it wouldn't have been culturally relevant and known to be attached to Halloween as such a big deal, it wouldn't have made it. It barely squeaked by. It's getting a 3. It's getting the lowest acceptable score.
All right. When did the Ghostbusters movie come out? Is this an October movie? Come on.
No.
It's a summer blockbuster. Get out of here.
Yeah, it was
Get out of here.
I mean,
no, fine.
honestly,
I'll count no one's going to take our list seriously if we don't include Ghostbusters just based on the property, so our list has to include Ghostbusters.
Kind of that as well.
Yeah.
Ghost and Goblins. Okay, so this is kind of what caused me to spiral a little bit and then have to write out my criteria. You remember when I was spiraling about this?
Yeah, you basically messaged me and you're like, hey, Tyler, what if Ghosts and Goblins isn't a Halloween game?
So, and here's
what the fuck are you talking about, Johnny?
If you guys wonder how much I think about this, I don't know if that was like late at night or early in the morning when I messaged you that, but I'd been on it for a while. Like, I usually don't text you those kinds of things unless I've stewed on it for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Just to, if you want to know what Tyler's and I's relationship is like, you have to answer bullshit questions like that for me. So my problem is this. A lot of games, especially early games, as I was talking about, they do this thing and they're like, well, it's dark fantasy. Dark fantasy isn't always horror. It can be spooky, but it doesn't qualify. So I had to like really separate that, because I think at its core, Ghost and Goblins is dark fantasy, right? You're a knight. You've got a princess. She's captured. This is fantasy. Like, this happens like then. If we didn't count this, then monsters and everything, every D&D game would count, because it's like, oh, it's got a lich and it's got magic and it's got monsters. So I don't know. And, it's got some dark caves, Halloween. And it's like, I'm almost convinced, but I had to be like, no, dark fantasy isn't necessarily Halloween. It, like, swallowing it up in that doesn't let it live and breathe as its own thing. So I was like, is it this? And then I'm like, no, like, there's too many monsters dedicated to this. The monsters are violent. The ghosts are the big, like, they don't particularly attack you, but the ghosts in that game are the biggest assholes. Hate them. You have a little red gargoyle or devil attacking you. The game itself, just the cruel twist after you beat it the first time and have to do it again. All that led me to being like, okay, yes, it qualifies. It has horror elements. It gets it's got a little bit spooky, like the ghost town level. It's like, oh yeah, that's like pretty spooky. And then like just the first level, walking around and like you're in a graveyard and zombies are popping up. I'm like, no, this counts. Okay. But I had to talk myself into it for a little bit because I had spun so far on every game I'm looking at, because I was looking at all these lists and people being like dark fan, and I'm like, no, that's just dark fantasy. That's just dark fantasy. Stop it. And yeah, I really had to dive deep and like really think about what my criteria would be then. Like if I imagined a world where Ghosts and Goblins can count, why did I imagine that? I'm glad I arrived at the right conclusion that it counts.
Yes, it definitely counts. I'll say, all right, I can understand the difference between dark fantasy and Ghost and Goblin. I'll say this is dark fantasy, but it only focuses on the spooky elements of dark fantasy. Yeah. Like literally the fucking final boss is Satan. Like not just like the concept of the devil, canonically Satan, US version of the game. It is Satan. That's pretty cool. Also Little Nicky on Game Boy Color, maybe. Also a Halloween game.
It is. I that's a game I took a picture of a while ago. I thought about doing a video on it. Like I did so many like just pictures back in the day through the many years. I've been doing this since like 2015, right? Then taking pictures every day. I was like, I have to like go back and get the modern era and like do videos. So it's fun to be able to go back and use some of the stuff I've used before. But yeah, I took a picture of Little Nicky once upon a time and said, this counts.
Okay, man, Johnny, believe it or not, I barely remember the plot of Little Nicky. Does anyone younger than like 25 years old know what the fuck Little Nicky is?
I mean,
I feel like that is a movie that has made zero impact on popular culture.
Oh, yeah. I think they're making a sequel, though. I want to say that I read that there's a sequel to Little Nicky, or like maybe it got shelved. But
don't tell
me.
Is this because he didn't get an Oscar for Uncut Gems, and he said like, if I don't get an Oscar for Uncut Gems, I'm just gonna make nothing but shitty movies for the rest of my life?
I think so.
I don't think he even got a nomination. Dude, Uncut Gems is a classic of our time. What are we doing here?
You mean Little Nicky 2?
What?
Little Nicky 2.
I don't know about that.
Uncut Gems is just Little Nicky 2. You didn't know that?
I don't even know how to respond to that. That's so upsetting that you're saying that. Ghostbusters 2. We already said just Ghostbusters count because of Ghostbusters. Fine.
Yes.
Ghoul School, Johnny. All right. If you have the name, like, all right, I understand that there's the dark fantasy distinction and anything. If you have the name Ghost or Ghoul or something like that in your title, I feel like that goes a long way to making you a Halloween game.
Yeah, especially Ghoul, like Ghoul specifically. School, and like, you're like, oh, well, School, is that scary? Like, if you think about Japanese horror, then School definitely lives in that realm. And yeah, I counted it.
When I think of Japanese fiction, like literally everything takes place in a school. Like, guys, high school was like 3 or 4 years. Like, it happened. It's over. Think of something else that happened, please.
Nope.
Can I ask you something?
Absolutely. I would love you to.
Ghoul School.
No, that's fine. Electro Brain, 1992. I keep forgetting to say the years. Ghosts and Goblins on the NES, 1986.
I want to go back to my favorite video game system, the Game Boy Color, and talk. I want to get your opinion on Wendy Every Which Way and either one of the Sabrina the Teenage Witch games.
They count.
Is it because they're witches?
It's because they're witches, and there's pumpkins, and there's spooky magic, and there's playful mischief.
I don't actually know that much about the Sabrina games. But is it basically the same as the Wendy games?
The Wendy games, they cover a lot of the same elements.
Shantae doesn't count. Oh, I guess Sabrina has like a black cat too, huh?
Yes.
Shantae
and
counts.
Wendy
Shantae
is related to Casper, the friendly ghost, like in, you know. But
that's just spooky. That's not Halloween, Johnny.
But it also has. I mean, you also like fight skeletons and everything. Like, you played it, didn't you?
Wendy? I played Wendy.
Yeah.
Shantae counts.
Ghost and
She's a
Like you
genie.
ride a broom. You ride a broom across a moon.
I okay. Cotton.
Cotton is interesting because I often think about whether cotton counts or not, and I have not decided yet on cotton.
Oh,
because
cotton is such
I
a yes.
I bought a bunch of them, and like because the cover is so dead on, and I'm just like, does cotton count, or is it trying to do too many different things? So I was like, is this just fantasy? Is this like where does it live? I have to think about cotton quite a bit.
No, I've literally only played the Neo Geo Pocket Color version. But whatever. It's got all the bosses are like big, spooky, skeleton, creepy things.
Yeah,
Cotton's gonna make it as a Halloween game.
What's the other one? Castle Shishigami?
That is not a Halloween game. What? That isn't even close.
Castle Shishigami? Aren't you witches riding brooms and fighting monsters?
You're because it's in Japan. You're probably high school students because everything is. But you're just like dudes flying in space.
Or are you sure about that?
I am. I used to play that in college instead of paying attention to my lectures. I would play Toho Project and Shikigami no
I'm looking at the cover. There's a witch right on it.
I mean, there might be a witch. All right, so this is like a thing, and like how much does a theme matter to a game? Because I feel like for the average person just playing Shikigami no Shiro, it's just like a fucking shooter, and there's like some Japanese characters shooting you, and you don't really care what the story is. You're just dodging bullets. Whereas if you're playing Cotton, the point of it is kind of the cute witch character. The theme matters a lot more in Cotton than I'll say it matters in Shikigami no Shiro.
I agree. Look, I'm not disagreeing with that, and I haven't put either of them through their paces to like really think through it. Like everything on this list I did think about. I have not done that with these, so I don't want to just be off the cuff and be like, no, that one doesn't count, especially since I haven't played all of them. Like I've played the one on the I think I have an Xbox, a Japanese Xbox version of it, and a Wii version. But I did buy like the Cotton games thinking, it's like, God, do these count? Like I bought the Switch versions, and I have a bunch of the Sega Saturn Japanese versions. And it's like, do I have obviously the Super Famicom one? I was like, do I buy the one on Genesis? Do I get like Panorama Cotton? I had to think about it.
All right, someone who knows the plot of Shikigami no Shiro is going to come back and be like, you don't understand how horrific the story is. I played the visual novel spinoff, and
yeah, that's probably going to happen.
This is all right. So just I want to read this real quick, Johnny. Let's go on a little tangent. We're known for those. This is Mobile Light Force 2. It was released in the West, or Shikigami no Shiro. The shooter. It's a bullet hell shooter. So all you're doing, like, yeah, the characters talk to each other sometimes, but the bosses explode into bullets, and then you got to dodge the bullets. In July 2005, a string of serial murders take place in Tokyo. All the victims are female and killed by external injury. The killings take place within 20 hours. On July 21st, the 31st victim is found. Police classify the case as Special Crime 568 and seek investigators from occult sources. On July 23rd, there's a 32nd victim. What? Who makes a bullet hell shooter and that's the plot? What?
Sounds like it might qualify.
I don't know. If there was a...
Also, missing an opportunity to make that October 31st.
I feel like that 31st is a coincidence.
I mean, 31 is a Halloween number.
Oh, sure.
You might even say the Halloween number.
31 is... I feel like... So, I don't know what the plot of Mobile Light Force is. Or I guess this is Mobile Light Force 2. Mobile Light Force is a different shooter. So, wait, Mobile Light Force... What's Mobile Light Force? That's another game.
Yeah,
that's another good game. Gunbird. So the sequel to Mobile Light Force is Mobile Light Force 2 Shikigami no Shiro, a completely different, unrelated game, but in the West they're just like, they're both shooters. Just make it Mobile Light Force 2. That's so funny.
Who gives a shit? Was that in the West, or did they do that was that PAL?
Oh no, it's in North America too. I think it's on PS2 maybe.
Did you know you can get Castle of Shishigami 2 on the Switch? Of course you can.
You can get everything on the Switch. You can't get the whole series on Switch? That's crazy to me if you can't.
I'm surprised it's not a compilation.
Yeah. It's coming, don't worry.
Yeah, okay, sweet. Excellent. All right. A game that barely made it. Gremlins 2, The New Batch. That one barely squeaked through for me. And I love Gremlins 2. I've talked about Gremlins 2 on this podcast and how much I like the movie. And the game barely squeaks by. And even Gremlins 2 as a movie, like, I think it leans more towards Christmas, like all that, especially all the consumerism that it makes fun of. Gremlins 2 is a satire. Yes, it's a sequel to Gremlins, but it is not the same as Gremlins.
Yeah. Is Gremlins 2 the movie where the guy was like, he didn't want to make a sequel and they forced him to make it, so he made it like
they didn't force him. So they wanted to make a sequel. He said no. And then and they were going to do it with someone else. It fell through. And then they're like, you have to make a sequel. Like, we'll pay you. And he was like, I'm only going to, Joe Dante. And it's like, I'm only doing this if we do it exactly the way I want to. And then that's how we got Gremlins 2.
All right. That's how every movie should be made. I just want one guy's vision. And you know what? If it sucks, it sucks. But you know what? Sometimes just one guy has the best stories. Yeah. I don't know if Gremlins 2 falls into like my peak fiction there is, but it's nice thinking that there's one guy behind something, especially when we're talking about video games where like literally 800 people have to collaborate to make them now. But you know, we don't really care about all those people who put like all the actual work into making the game. I just want to say like, hey, Hideo Kojima, good job making this entire video game.
Yeah. Anyways, Gremlins 2, the game though, and again, given it rests on, like, it gets to qualify kind of the same way Ghostbusters does. Like, the name, I think people would be thrown off if it didn't. I think culturally they just will lump it in. Yeah. And I like, even though I feel like maybe it doesn't or shouldn't qualify, it's like getting a begrudging pass.
All right. There are a lot of goblins and bats and spiders. So you know what? You don't have to feel too bad about it, but yeah, I agree.
I know, but yes. Yeah, the game is leaned more into it oddly than the movie. But there are some horror scenes in the movie too, even though, and it's a little bit comedic, and it does have that mischievous stuff, which gives it some of the Halloween elements. There are elements, according to my criteria, that it does classify under, even if I don't think traditionally it hits every beat.
All right.
I'm going to talk about another one that doesn't qualify that most people are putting on their lists, and I'm here to fight them.
I am so happy we have finally got to another one that doesn't make it.
Yeah. Jaws. Jaws does not make it. It's not horror. It's look, forget what you know about the movie.
Jaws isn't horror?
Forget what you know about the movie and think about the game. It's not really horror. There's like one monster, and the monster is actually just a shark. So, yeah.
Do they use the Jaws theme in the game at all?
I don't know if they do. I think they use a bad version. It's not spooky. There's nothing Halloween on it.
So it's been a while since I played Jaws. I remember there's a lot of grinding, and then you have to find Jaws and attack him.
We know this is the most boring game on the NES.
But I remember, like, I know you hit Jaws at points when you're not expecting it, and it might be scary that Jaws is there. But I also remember, like, wanting to go find Jaws. I'm like, oh, okay, I'm level 10 or whatever. Let me just go get to Jaws now. So I was hunting Jaws as much as he was hunting me, which is, I guess, kind of funny. Yeah. Also, he's not a threat at all because at the top of the ocean in Jaws, you're completely invincible, which removes a lot of the tension from that game.
This game just isn't it. Even if you gave it a 1 in horror, even if you gave it a 2 in horror, it's not getting anything else. It's not qualifying.
I mean, it's also like the epitome of the summer blockbuster, so I'm not going to call it a Halloween game. Oh, you gave it 0s across the board. Look at you.
I did.
I might give it a 1 for horror or spooky.
That's why I just said, like, I can understand if you, like, bump up some of the horror, but it's still not qualifying. It's not getting a point anywhere else. I'm hard on Jaws because too many people have tried to fight me on stupid Jaws, especially the game. And I'm just like, no, get out of here. Again, some things get to be elevated by their property. This is not one of them. And I understand if Jaws scared you and made you afraid of the ocean. I get that. But still, we're not doing it. Maniac Mansion, and that was Jaws LJN 1987. Maniac Mansion, Jelko 1990. You think this one qualifies? It sure does. I mean, we don't need to explain.
It literally
Maniac
starts
Mansion.
up with like a bunch of kids walk up to a spooky house. It's like the most Halloween thing ever. Yeah.
Yeah, without being like directly on Halloween. It's like yes.
I don't know if they say it in the game. I'd be like shocked if they named a specific date that wasn't Halloween for Maniac Mansion, because it's just so full of like weird tropes.
And there was like a television series. Did you ever see that?
No. What the fuck are you talking about?
There was a television series for Maniac Mansion.
That is a lie. Is that from
No,
like the 90s?
It was like, right when the game came out. Like
You
shortly
kids
after,
and your
after.
cable. All right. I was too young for this then. 66 episodes? They never had reruns of this when I was watching TV.
I have yet to see an episode of it.
Okay. Weird.
So.
Weird. Remember when Ron Gilbert made good games? That was so cool when he was doing that. I hope Ron Gilbert doesn't listen to this show.
Yeah. I just looked real quick, and people are assuming that the game takes place in October.
Hey, all right, there you go.
People assume that, and a lot of it is based off of one expired pizza coupon that expired in September.
Wait, what?
But I don't think
a pizza coupon in the game, or that came with the game?
In the game. In the game.
So why? Oh, so it expired in September. But it's called like the expired pizza coupon. I don't remember. I might not have ever found it. Okay. Hey. That is such a good subtle reference to the fact that it would take place in October. That's the kind of, it's the kind of subtlety we just don't get in games anymore these days, Johnny. I love it. Give it a 3 for Halloween.
Also, cheerleading practice for the football game, and typically football is a fall sport. So yeah, like these things make sense. Like it's in the fall time frame. Yeah. Maniac Mansion, super counts, where there's nothing to argue about. Hey, you want to talk about a super disappointing game real quick?
Yeah, I do.
Hey, you know Konami, right? Maker of Castlevania?
I sure do.
What
Maker
if I told
Pachinko
you?
Machines.
Okay, so Castlevania 3 came out in 1990. What if I told you in 1992 Konami was making another monster-based property? It was going to have a vampire in it. It was going to have Frankenstein's monster, just called Monster. Would you think this is a great game? It's Konami, right?
I mean, it's Konami. They don't make anything except for bangers on NES.
Right? What if I told you there was couch co-op on it? Simultaneous 2-player.
That sounds impossible.
What if I told you that this game was kind of terrible? And like Konami totally phoned this in. This is Monster in My Pocket, and it is Konami's most phoned in game. People are like, oh yeah, it's great because the couch co-op and stuff. I loved it. Dude, the level design on this game is atrocious. It is uninspired. It is super boring. It is like they got the interns to be like, look, just do this, okay? Like Dracula and Frankenstein's monsters, they are exactly the same character. They don't even have different move sets. It's ridiculous. It's stupid.
All right, I need to. There has to be a more phoned-in game than Monster in My Pocket. Also, I disagree.
Not by
I think Monster in My Pocket's a good game.
Also, like Konami in 1992, after all of their experience, the end of life of the NES, like this should be a goddamn banger, pushing the hardware to the limits. And instead, it was just like, yeah, we just licensed property. We knocked it out real quick. If you don't know, Monster in My Pocket,
I disagree.
So
I think that the game looks really polished and has really nice graphics. I agree with you on the level design. The level design kind of sucks, but like
the moveset being
nothing
exactly
about it looks
the
phoned
same.
in.
Dude,
the moveset, you do like this giant swipe. I think I played as the Dracula guy. You do this giant swipe, and it's just like a normal attack. It's not like destroys everything in your path like it looks like. Like when you swing a Ninja Gaiden, it looks like you're destroying everything in your path, and you are destroying everything in your path. And when you swipe in Monster in My Pocket, it looks like you're about to blow everything up, and it just like hits a guy in front of you.
Yeah, it's This game, like, it is just not well thought out.
It's too easy also. I like this game,
Yes.
to be clear. Apparently a lot more than you. And I don't generally like easy games, so I'm surprised.
I just find the game to be disappointing. And that's I can't get past that because I just feel like it should have been awesome. And I feel like they just treated
it Monster in My Pocket and lower my opinion of it, which I probably would.
People like it. Like I think I'm an outlier. I remember like being like, oh my God, I bought this game, put it in. I was like so jazzed. I was like, oh, and I was so bored playing it.
Johnny, I think people overrate games that are easy because I've heard someone say on the YouTube recently that Chip 'n Dale 2 was their favorite NES game or something like insane like that. It was like Chip 'n Dale 1 or 2 was their favorite NES game. I have like all the amazing games in NES. Like I think Chip 'n Dale 1 it's like a pretty good platformer, but to call it the best NES game is crazy, I think.
That seems like a stretch. Yeah. But people are entitled to their personal opinions, and remember, opinions can be wrong. Yeah. Anyways.
Monster in My Pocket.
You want to know
though,
another confusing game? I'm sorry, say that again.
Monster in My Pocket counts for Halloween though, because it's got all the
yes. It does count, even though I find it disappointing. It squeaks by. It gets a low score.
It even comes with a treat.
It does. It comes with the Blemier is awesome. Like the little toys are awesome. Like don't get me wrong. Like the whole property is pretty cool. There's board games for it. There's an animated special, which did not do very well. It was going to be a series. And then they did that thing where they're like, oh, sorry, just kidding. No one liked this. So we're just calling it an animated special. But it was supposed to be a full blown series. They like deciphered it, a card game based off it. They like kept reviving the property. It survived for a very long time. Longer than you'd think. Okay.
Johnny, move us on.
I'm telling you about Monster Party. This game counts. You should not be shocked. But this is one of the games that's like the Monster Mash. There's a Medusa, there's Creature from the Black Lagoon, there's like Japanese horror monsters, Dracula, there's clearly a Japanese demon in it, there's a Grim Reaper, there's a pumpkin head guy.
There's a pumpkin ghost. I feel like if you have a pumpkin ghost, like, all right, we have reached peak Halloween.
You're counting. But there's also like, it's also because of aliens.
I don't know what the canonical explanation for this, but there is also a gourd is one of the bosses. Not a pumpkin, like specifically a gourd. It's pretty sweet.
Did you know that this is a US exclusive?
I don't believe you. What are you talking about?
It's a US exclusive game.
No, it's not.
Yeah, it is. Came out in June 1989. US exclusive, baby.
I would have thought that there's enough weird stuff in there that this is a Japanese game. But all right.
Yes, there is a prototype of it, but it never actually released in Japan, only released in the US.
Interesting.
Fun
fact.
What
about this Japanese players wouldn't have been into.
I mean, there's I don't know.
It's just like a spooky action platformer. Like that's an NES game. That's what they're about.
You want another fun fact?
What's another fun fact?
You know the pumpkin ghost you were talking about?
Yeah.
Originally, it was an ape from Planet of the Apes with a spinning head.
What is it? With a spinning head? What do you even mean? Planet of the Apes isn't even a horror movie.
I know. That was like one of the things they were going to do. It was, yeah, they're like, go read up on Monster Party. It's a weird game. It's a weird game with a weird story, and it's got some weird history. It's more interesting than you would expect.
All right.
So, yep.
Monster Party's in the set.
Yeah, definitely. It makes it. I don't like that it does the Monster Mash thing and like just monster soup all over and aliens. Like, oh God, I hate when they're just like monsters and also suddenly aliens are somehow the reason. I hate that a lot. Anyways, it super counts. I mean, like, look at the box. How could it not? And like you said, a pumpkin ghost, like, what am I supposed to do? How would I fight that? It gets a super high score. You know what doesn't get a super high score? Even though I've talked about it on an episode of the show, I had to really think about it. And again, this might be some Western bias. So take that into account. Phantom Fighter. Do you know Phantom Fighter?
I sure do
Based
know
off a
Phantom
movie?
Fighter. So,
Yeah.
hmm. Phantom Fighter is a very Japanese game. Like literally
is.
taking place in is it I'm looking at the thing, is it China now? I don't know, whatever. It has like traditional Asian
Hopping
architecture all
vampires.
over it.
Yes. And
And
it
if you were
has like,
thinking of like Japanese horror, I would be thinking of like, okay, I think of like Japanese architecture and there's like ghosts around. So I feel like this would be a Japanese Halloween game, but I don't know how big Halloween is in Japan.
it's not really a thing. Yeah. So
Didn't we
yeah,
have a
it's kind of
whole
like
thing about you were so excited that this was like based on a movie
yeah, it
and
was based off a movie called Mr. Vampire, which is horror, but the game does not succeed in the same way the movie does. Like I could see if someone wanted to push the score up just enough to get it to count, but I was like, I don't it doesn't really, because it is so non-Western, because it is very strictly, outside of our realm. I was like, well, then does it get points for Halloween stuff? Like, because it's definitely not trying to. So I struggled a little bit.
Is
with this
there
one.
that aspect of it? Like it's definitely not trying to. Do you have to try to be Halloween?
I think a little bit. Like you have to kind of want that. Like if you set your game in October, you want that association, right? Like that's part of it. You have to lean into Halloween to want it to be kind of Halloween, or something has to have happened that's so like with Friday the 13th. Like yes, they want the association now, but like it became associated, so there's no way it's intrinsically bound now. There's no way to separate them,
All right.
except maybe the long passage of time.
I will say Phantom Fighter doesn't count. I'm with you. It's just a stupid beat 'em up.
Shadowgate. This is another one of the ones I mentioned to you when I was spinning about dark fantasy, because Shadowgate is clearly dark fantasy. But I gave it the pass. Does that make sense to you?
I don't know. So when we get into like it has to, I know we didn't say it has to try to be Halloween. What about Shadowgate elevates it out of dark fantasy and into Halloween?
Okay, so it got a 0 in Halloweenness, by the way. But it got a 2 and a 3 in horror. And like I said, I don't want to bog people down. It got a 2 in horror and a 3 in spooky, because the elements are spooky. It does cause dread. It has atmospheric locations that do this to you. It has enemies that aren't exactly malicious, but I mean, it's a point and click adventure, so that's a little hard to ascribe intent with that. That's like point and click. But they are trying to kill you in some way. But the death scenes are horrific enough, especially for that era, that I considered the death scenes, and then really leans into that. That's not a mistake. And I had to compare it to, I went back to Deja Vu and I looked at all the death scenes in Deja Vu, and they are much more pedestrian, more normal, more set in the real world, not supernatural at all. Like, oh, guy got shot with a gun. Okay. Shadowgate really leans into the weird death. Your body gets eaten by acid, slime. You go in the wrong lake. You're a pile of bones. You die horribly. And they really wanted you to know that. So that's how I got there. I could see someone arguing against that, but I feel like it got enough of that and did that intentionally enough that it crossed over for me. Though I think it is at its core dark fantasy.
Man, collecting horror games sounds like it's easier than collecting Halloween games.
Yes.
Another element of Shadowgate I'll bring up, just because it goes maybe to that time thing we were talking about. Your torches burn down in real time as you're playing a point and click adventure game. Usually when that's a mechanic, especially for like more of a thinky game like Shadowgate, you basically get so many torches where it doesn't matter. And I won't say that you don't get a lot of torches, because you do, but I do remember I played this on Game Boy Color as a kid, and I ran out of torches, and there's basically nothing you could do because you reload your last save and you still don't have enough torches, so you just have to start the game over.
Yeah, I mean, thankfully it's not a very long game, but still,
yeah, I know. I mean, for me, I was like devastated because I'm like 12 years old. I don't know how stupid I am, and like once you know how to do all the puzzles, it's like, oh, it took me like a half hour to get back to where I was. Anyway, Spooky game.
It has that thing I talked about, that, and the torches are the timer. So it's like, okay, like it did the thing. Also, that timer, the idea of the torch creates a weird element of dread that really isn't in point and click adventures too much. Yeah. Like you can be worried about like if you're going to make the wrong choice, but like that active clock does something to you.
It sure does.
So good point.
I think we need more games with strict time limits. And I'm talking like Fallout 1, you get a certain amount of in-game time to beat the game. And if you don't do it, it's like, suck it, just start the game over. You lost. That stresses me out the entire game. And no games really do that because games are just like, here's a huge open world, playing it for 900 hours.
They don't want you to get a good 45-minute, hour-long game. Like, it doesn't matter if it took you 5 hours to master it. They're just like, oh yeah, you're done now.
I like the concept of real-time clocks, even though like when I'm playing it, I don't, because it's like scary and horrible. I'm like, oh my God, am I going to lose all my progress in this entire game? Make more shitty games developers is what I'm saying. Make me restart games. Not enough games make you start from the beginning because you screwed up.
Yeah, probably for a reason. Probably weren't successful. Anyways, that came out in 1998 by, is that Sega? Is that who did that?
Highly doubt it. Shadowgate,
yeah.
I don't think that came out in 1998. Maybe 1988.
1989, sorry.
Okay.
Transposing. I mean, it came out before that because this was a PC game. It was like you can get it on Apple IIc before this. This is a port to the NES.
Was it on Apple II?
Yeah.
I think Shadowgate's like a big Macintosh game.
Was it on the Apple II?
Do I have the Macintosh Go get version? Your it was probably ported back. Yeah, there was an Apple II version, but the version you want is the Macintosh game. That's the classic version.
I'm like, am I crazy? Anyways, a sequel to this, Deja Vu, didn't count, didn't even make the list, not talking about it. But after that, same developer, not truly a sequel, but in the spiritual successors, let's say, Uninvited. Uninvited counts. I don't think I really need to explain the haunted house point-and-click adventure game to you, but that came out in 1991 in June, and it's highly rated.
Never played Uninvited, but sure, it's a spooky haunted house game.
Yeah,
sure. I mean, Halloween.
The cover in Japan is so much better than the US cover. I don't even like every time I look at the US cover, I don't understand it. It's like, oh, there's like a ghost that's appearing, and you're like, okay, and he's got like a wizard's hat. Does that make sense? You're like, why is he wearing a ruff? How is he dressed? These clothes don't go together. Why would you have a wizard's hat and a ruff? What kind of ghost was this? He was like a dainty, lovely ghost. He was like, I am fabulous and I'm dressed to the nines, and it's too bad I'm dead because I am killing it.
When you see a box like that, like I wonder how many sales are affected just because the box art guy didn't do a great job. Because, like, nothing about the character is appealing. You don't look at him and immediately think, like, oh, he was a wizard. You don't think that, like, oh, this is horrific because he, like, looks too cartoony for that. And then the ruff around his neck, it's like, what are we in, like, colonial times? Was this a colonial ghost? Was he a pilgrim that just looks a little bit blue? Just not a good. And
he's got two ruffs, to be clear. He has not one, but two ruffs. And then, like, a kerchief, too. It's baffling. Also, his skeleton makes no sense. It's like, is he a ghost or is he a skeleton? He's floating like a skeleton, but he's got bone. He's floating like a ghost, but has the bones like a skeleton, but the bones are distorted. Man, I hate this box art.
So, I mean, the Japanese box is super boring. It's literally just a mansion. Like it's a generic, it's like an AI generated spooky mansion, dark, hand-drawn style. It's so generic. It's got lightning bolts in the background. But just imagine just having a black box with the spooky mansion on it, and then it just says uninvited on the top of it. How cool that would look compared to the bullshit we got.
So much better. Yeah, the Japanese
because it's a good name.
Such a good name, and they just messed it up. They totally were like, we're the US, we know better on this box, and got it wrong. They really screwed this up, and don't at me and tell me the art is good. It's terrible. That makes no sense. This is so stupid. Like, is that a wand or is that guy Is he have a vape in his hand? I don't know what's going on. What's the snake doing? Like, this is so stupid. Like, clearly it's a haunted mansion hallway and they're trying to give you weird perspective, but like you have to really stare at this, and there's nothing about this that makes you want to stare at it. For such a game that's highly rated, I wish we would have just got the generic Japanese box art, because that to me is cool. Like that is like a really cool box, and they like put it at a weird angle too, which like distorts your sense of reality and lets you know that something is off about this mansion. Very cool. Love it.
All right.
Not the US box,
again, you can get the Macintosh version, which does have a generic spooky haunted house box art, but the Macintosh box is not good.
No, the Macintosh box, that one's like okay, like that's like House on a Hill. And you got to be careful, because if you get the wrong version, you got that like windowed version of the box art, which is terrible, and it's all tiny and stupid.
Yeah. If you have box art and it doesn't take up the full box, like, why did you bother? If you're going to make a box art, make it the full box. Don't give me this little framed picture, because it always looks bad. It never looks good. Always looks like a budget release or something.
Yep. Dislike intensely. Anyways, It still counts. Here is a game that does not count, and I forgot to make it pink for you, but and it seems like on its face it should count. Zombie Nation. You heard of this one?
This is such I want to hear your rationale. I mean, I don't know yet one way or the other if this counts. This game is just so insane that I don't know how to think about it in terms of Halloween.
This game is its own thing, and that's exactly it, right? It's like, it is entirely its own thing. It features some supernatural enemies, and you've got like that Japanese, I forget the name of the head, but like the spirit head that's there. The game is insane, and it's not like really zombies. I think they just called it zombies because they didn't know what to do with it.
I'm sure this has nothing to do with zombies in the Japanese title, whatever it is.
No.
They were just like, I don't understand Japanese horror. Let's call this game Zombie Nation.
Yeah, and it's like not even horror, because it's kind of an action game. It's like more like Monster Destroys a City. Yeah, this is... doesn't count.
Hold on, what is the original name? Does it translate to something? Hooligan Tengu? It's a samurai head who goes to the United States to destroy Darkseid, an alien that crashed to Earth via a meteorite and turned all the American people into zombies. If you haven't played Zombie Nation, like, here's your homework, man.
Yeah.
This game's awesome.
Yeah, they're going to turn into zombies, but again, it's aliens, so like, what kind of zombies are there? Again, this just feels like someone didn't really understand what was happening. So I'm not sure those are actual zombies. And fucking aliens again. Like, stop making... They did this so often on like these kinds of games. They're just like, and aliens. We don't know what to do. Call it aliens. That's a good reason. Aliens are scary. Yeah, no.
Are you saying Alien isn't a Halloween movie?
No, Alien is. Aliens is not.
Ooh, I don't even know if I would call Alien a Halloween movie. It's definitely a horror movie. I don't know if it has Halloween vibes.
Well, I mean, I don't know if it...
I feel like, you know what, sci-fi horror in general just doesn't feel very Halloween-y.
I agree with you incredibly.
But dark fantasy horror can feel Halloween-y.
So, look, I agree, but I feel like Alien does enough. Like the tight corridors, the weird atmosphere, the stalking of the alien or the xenomorph above Ripley and stuff, like, you know, the dread that is caused by it being around. But yeah, I agree. In general, like, scary sci-fi is not really, it doesn't feel very Halloween-y to me, though people like to watch Alien on Halloween. I think some part of the world has just said, yeah, that's horror, so it counts. But that game did not make the list because it wasn't. Alien is not on the NES. Alien 3 is.
I mean, either way, it wouldn't make the list for me. I'm totally happy to not count it.
All right. I like that you look. I like that we agree that like sci-fi horror, it doesn't get the pass that people want to give it. But what
about Jason X though?
That's not a game, thankfully, and we don't have to classify it.
Okay.
I mean, it's gonna. Yeah, we can move on. Hey, let's talk about a sci-fi game though, real quick. That does count. let's talk about, and this is it's not in alphabetical order, this one, but Abadox. And this is kind of like a weird outlier pick that I think some people don't put on their list, but I think they should. Tyler, do you agree with me that Abadox should be considered a Halloween spooky horror game? One of these things.
I would put it into the barely counts category with some of our other things. You know what? Maybe even not. I think Abadox, counts maybe more than Ghostbusters. Ghostbusters is really tenuous, the game, on its links to Halloween. Whereas Abadox is like, maybe besides Chiller, the most gruesome and horrific game. Even if it isn't like explicitly horror, it's like if David Cronenberg made a shooter.
Yes. Abadox is body horror 100%.
Yeah.
And if you don't know what body horror is like, I like that. If David Cronenberg made this, like, yes, 100%. If David Cronenberg just decided to make a shooter, he would have made Abadox somehow.
Yeah. So other video games will have like skeleton enemies, and Abadox will have like skeleton with the skin melting off it enemies, and like maybe you'll have an eyeball enemies, and Abadox will have an eyeball with like the nerve coming out of it that's like detailed. Abadox is awesome. Only other game, another game, I think Sweet Home also has some pretty horrific visuals. Sweet Home, Chiller, and Abadox, I think, are the most gruesome games on NES.
Yes. I didn't bring up Sweet Home because I kept this strictly to US titles.
Yeah.
And I almost didn't do, like, I only included Chiller because I felt like we had to talk about Chiller. I didn't want to go through the whole unlicensed library. But Abadox sold you a lie with its horrible fucking box art. What happened here? How did we get this dumbass box art for Abadox? And even the advertisements in the US are horrible. Like, just, what is this? And then if you look at the Japanese one, the Japanese box art is so sweet. And you're like, and the game is so much more expensive in Japan. Like, it's crazy. Like, this is an expensive game in Japan. I don't think it's too expensive in the US still. And the box art is just like this terrible Milton Bradley, silver bordered, left justified, awful windowed. It's just like the worst of all box arts. And they made it like campy and stupid for a game that is so horrific. You're just like, the game you got, like, you know how normally you look at the box art and you're like, this box art is so sweet. And then you get the video game and you're like, this is nothing like the box art. This sucks. This is the reverse. I don't know how that happened on the NES, but it did with Abadox.
Abadox, it's like $40 complete in box in America, and it's like a $500 game in Japan. It's really expensive in Japan because it's fucking awesome, and I think because of the theme. And yeah, again, like, this game obviously sold well in America because it's cheap. I think there was also a bunch of new old stock of it. I mean, they must be because it was published by Milton Bradley, and they told them like to tone it down somehow. Because, like, if you're told to make the box art for this game, like, what do you do if Milton Bradley is publishing it? And it's just like, it's a guy who looks like the fucking, what's the guy, the Scepter? Is that his name? What's his name? Spectre. It looks like a green and red Spectre from DC Comics shooting at a cartoon slug. It's so dorky.
It is, and there's like an alien vessel, like a comic-y style, like UFO in it, and you're just like, what is this?
But then they kept the Japanese logo, which is Abadox. It's this metal Abadox logo, and the bottom is entirely covered in gore. It's insane.
Right. Like, the logo is the only hint at what's actually going to happen to you in this game. It's crazy how incongruent the logo is with the rest of the box. Also, I love it's got a subtitle. It's Abadox, The Deadly Inner War.
Yeah, because it exclusively takes place inside stuff. That's why everything is so gross.
Yep. Anyways, man, sleeper hit. Go pick up Abadox. Who cares? You know, it's one of the times I might just be like, throw that box in the trash and go get a custom box, or just spend up and get the Japanese one because this box is so stupid.
I have probably YOLO bid on some sealed ones when they come up because this game is worthless. I haven't won one yet though. But you know what? You want to give me like a mint condition Abadox for like $200? I'll take it.
Yeah. Abadox is sweet. I can't believe like the box is so bad. I can't believe how bad the box is and how good the game is. Anyways. And just as a comparison for a game that people are like, oh, it's kind of like Abadox. It does like the inside the body stuff. Life Force Salamander, it's not on the same level. It does not qualify. It is not the same as Abadox. This is like Abadox's like third cousin twice removed that I think you could legally marry if you needed to, but you shouldn't. Just leave this alone.
You brought up Life Force when we were discussing this episode a lot, and I didn't understand why, because the concept of Life Force being a Halloween game, let alone a horror game, like I would not have even considered it. And but you're right, it does have like one of those like gross undulating levels. But then there's a lot of other games that do that, and I think most of them are sci-fi games.
Contra, this is very sci-fi tropey.
Yeah, the end of Contra is all like gross alien garbage. There's a Ninja Gaiden 3 level that's like a bunch of undulating orange guts. Like the Battletoads Turbo Tunnel is like made of guts. So yes. We're not even considering games that just have like one or two levels that's a haunted house or that's made of guts, because that doesn't like kind of create the overall theme of a game. It's kind of why Ghosts and Goblins, yes, it's a dark fantasy game, but it can count as a Halloween game because the overall theme of the game is all the horrific monsters that we associate with Halloween. Whereas Banjo-Kazooie just has a haunted house level, so it is not a Halloween game.
Yeah, like Mario has some friendly ghosts in it, and you can go into some ghost levels, but that it's not the same. Like Mario World,
but there's multiple ghosts. Ghost House are a really big part of Super Mario World, John.
They really are, but it's not. It's a big part, but it's not. It's still not enough. And Mario, like you get pumpkin. Look, they even get pumpkin masks, right? And it's like, I want to. Like, clearly somebody loves it, but we didn't get all the way there, and that's the problem.
I mean, it's a lot of like murdering animals. Like, if you had translated Mario directly, like it'd be pretty terrifying. Just watching like a plumber stomp on turtles.
Yeah, it could have been Mario. Could have been a horror game. It could have been The Last of Us. Like The Last of Us Part 7 is actually just Mario Brothers.
Okay.
Think about it.
I think, it might work better as dark fantasy, which is why we got that in the Super Mario Brothers movie, which now I have to clarify, of course, is the real one, the original one.
Yes. With Dennis Hopper.
God, that movie's so good.
Very strange movie.
People who can't enjoy that movie, ironically, like what is in your headspace? Like I enjoy that movie actually, but I understand like it's also very weird, so you can enjoy it ironically too. I think it's a legitimately good movie, like just below Ghostbusters in my tier of like dark fantasy. Like that is how bullish I am on the Super Mario Brothers movie.
I think those people really want. Like, they're just being too literal about it, and they couldn't get past their expectations. So I think it achieves a failure of expectation, which people can't get past a lot of times. Like, to get past a failure of expectation, like when you've put too much of your own weight on a thing, you have to sit back, internalize it, and then go, okay, the things I didn't enjoy were things I created in my mind, and I did not take the piece for what it was. So you have to, like, really step outside of yourself and just experience it without putting all of your bullshit on it to see if it counts. So I think that's what happens there.
I think people need to recognize that something could be stupid and still entertaining. Like when let's talk about like the Goomba heads. Like, yes, the Goomba heads in the Super Mario Brothers are very stupid and make absolutely no sense. And like even in the lore, out of the lore, like it's just an insane concept. But it's very funny, and Shigeru Miyamoto had a small part in making this movie, and that makes it fucking hilarious, and so thus is very entertaining. All right.
I think all of those things are true. All right, I'm going to go through just very quickly. That's our last game on the NES that counts. If you feel like something I missed or something shouldn't count, let me know. Like, let me know what you think. But I do have a small list of things that I know a lot of people bring up, and I want to just tell you they don't count.
Oh, okay.
Okay? And I like, we can fight about them, but Alien 3 doesn't count. It's an alien. That game is actually pretty terrible. Nothing in the game really does anything for it. All the aliens like die in one shot too. There's overpopulated. It's a terrible game. I just dislike that game quite a bit. And it's LGN and it's 1993. It should have been better than that, but it's LGN. Godzilla 1 and 2, these are like monsters, yes, but it's like more sci-fi than it is. It's like kind of its own thing. It's not like really horror. If you tell me the first Japanese Godzilla or even the new one, like with the horror of nuclear war and Godzilla coming and destroying the town like that, yeah, those ones we could have that discussion, but these games aren't that. They don't count. Toxic Crusader is like just like peak 90s nonsense. It's not that I don't enjoy it, like the movie. It's just a trauma film translated into a game, but it's not really. It doesn't cross that level. It's camp, and it's not like camp can make it. Attack of the Killer Tomatoes makes it, but this is not specifically horror. This is more comedy, goofy action. Werewolf: The Last Warrior. Hey, Tyler, can we talk about how we live in a world where a werewolf didn't make the Halloween list?
I want to go back to Toxic Crusaders.
Okay,
because I'm concerned that Attack of the Killer Tomatoes made it and Toxic Crusaders didn't. Even if Toxic Crusaders is, stupid campy horror rather than, well, no, it is horror, stupid campy horror.
It's not horror though. It's action comedy with some horrific deaths or some horrific scenes.
I'm looking at the game because I don't know the game. All right, fine. I'll count you there. For some reason, I agreed with you on Attack of the Killer Tomatoes squeaking through. So sure.
All right. So Werewolf: The Last Warrior, like I said, by Data East 1990, does not count. Sorry, guys. This is an action game. Yeah, it's like a wolf, but it's like this is like kind of just another one of these bad translations from over in Japan. Yeah, it's kind of a werewolf, but this has nothing to do with Halloween or horror. This is just all action. There's nothing spooky about this. Like, even if we count the werewolf, that's still only getting 1 point, not achieving the necessary 3. There's no horror. There's nothing, none of that. It's just it's the name more than anything. And trust me, it comes with a comic book. There's no one more disappointed by this than me. I really wanted this to be a thing, and I discounted it very quickly a long time ago. It doesn't count. I'm not counting it. You can come back and fight me.
Okay.
Kid Clown in Nightmare World does not count. Sorry. It's actually like a nightmare. It's not... Even though they made the pun, they did not lean into any of it, and it's like a mascot game. Yeah. This doesn't count. It should. It like almost should, but it doesn't. They didn't.
Johnny, clowns are spooky. It's one of the most iconic Halloween spooky things.
I agree. I wanted to count this. Also, they called it Nightmare World. It's got like this cool name that you had missed, that it was a pun. I was like, oh, I love all this. Nope, doesn't count.
I beat that game. I probably read the manual and I didn't put together Nightmare and Nightmare. Meaning it was a bad title because I couldn't have been the only one who missed that. And that's why no one bought it. That's exactly why no one bought Kid Clown, and now it's like $200 for a loose cartridge. I will agree it's not a Halloween game.
Yeah. Anyways, the last one that does not count, maybe you've heard of this game. Mendel's Palace. You heard of this one?
Why would anyone even consider Mendel Palace a
because
Halloween?
It's got some monstery looking stuff on the front, and like someone put it in their list and I saw it and I was offended it was on there, so I just wanted to tell you it does not count. Get it out of here. How would it even count? It's the
someone
game
put it on their list.
Whimsical.
What?
Yeah. Yes. Like,
because it has a bunch of crazy characters?
Dude,
every game has a bunch of crazy characters.
You know I hate video game YouTube, right? You know I hate it.
Yeah, because only your opinion's correct and everyone else's opinion is wrong.
No, that's not what I'm saying. In fact, I've invited you to correct me quite many of times, right?
Yeah.
Anyways, my point is, I think when your goal is to create content and you've got to do it every year, you will start making bad exceptions. And like, I already did a Halloween list, 22 more NES Halloween games. And it's like, you're just stacking anything. And that's why I felt like I had to have a very specific criteria that eliminated things and just had to say no to other things because lists like this are just getting made. So that was also part of the reason and why I was spinning about whether Ghouls and Ghosts counted or if it was just Dark Fantasy. Was I doing the thing that I was criticizing others for doing? Was I just adding it because I feel like that's content and I want to talk about that? Even just because one zombie, is that enough to make it for me? Anyways, that led me, like, one, I'm always thinking about Halloween stuff and Halloween games, but it really forced me to sit down this year and really do this horrific deep dive. And here is your list. We did it. I hope you enjoyed knowing all the games I count and like what my dumb criteria is. Yeah, there was quite a lot of them. 31 games, I think. 31. Yeah, 31 games on the list, and a couple I discounted again, Johnny? Off of it. What's that?
Do you want to list them again real quick?
Sure. I can go real quick through them. The ones that count. Nightmare on Elm Street, Addams Family, Pugly Scavenger Hunt, Attack of the Killer Tomatoes, Beetlejuice, Bram Stoker's Dracula, Castlevania 1, 2, and 3, Chiller, Dr. Chaos, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, Fester's Quest, Frankenstein, The Monster Returns, Friday the 13th, Gargoyles Quest 2, Ghostbusters, Ghostbusters 2, Ghost and Goblins, Ghoul School, Gremlins 2 The New Batch, Maniac Mansion, Monster in My Pocket, Monster Party, Shadowgate, Uninvited, Zombie Nation, and Abadox. That's it. Do you want to know which one got the highest scores?
Ghosts and Goblins.
No, Ghosts and Goblins got a 6. There was a lot of 6s, like Nightmare on Elm Street's a 6, Friday the 13th, Ghost and Goblins is a 6, but Uninvited gets a 7. And the Castlevania's got a 7. And I have to think about whether all that makes sense, but that in my initial pass of all these scores were the ones I rated the highest for, leaning towards the most in these 3 categories. To be clear, your scores, though, Frankenstein, you didn't give a 3 for Halloween, even though if you asked someone to draw 3 characters from Halloween, like, they would definitely draw Frankenstein as one of them. I'm sorry, because it got a point for that. It got 1 point.
1 point for that, for being like one of the most iconic images of the concept of Halloween.
It got points for being horror. It counts. What more do you want it to be? You're like, well, it's Frankenstein. It's a monster, I know. And vampires, I know those too, and Dracula. So those should all be solid 3s in Halloween. And I don't agree. Okay, there's not a pumpkin. There's nothing associated with the media. I gave you the criteria. It's very clear why that doesn't rate for me there. It does get some points, but it doesn't go all the way up to the highest points.
So really no Mendel Palace, Johnny?
Further. What's that?
No Mendel Palace?
Nope.
Okay.
All right.
Mendel Palace is the Guardian. It's like another Guardian legend in how much people want to talk about it, and that's why it got forced into that guy's list that you saw.
Probably. Anyways, that's it. That's the whole thing, Tower. That's it. If you want to see this list, I can publish it. If you want to see my crazy, stupid document, I can share that with you. But yeah,
Johnny, wizardry. You go through a dungeon and fight mostly like skeletons and stuff.
Oh, cool. Thank you.
Leading up to Wordna, a sorcerer, very spooky. Permadeath, that's spooky.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about how Pocky
we didn't
and Rocky
touch on, though, that we discussed outside the episode was, are the circumstances normal for the people living inside the game world?
Yes, that's an interesting idea.
Because the concept of, like, Battletoads is, like, if that was real life, that would be horrific to us.
Yes.
But if we're in a world of sentient toads, then maybe it's not as horrific.
Right. And that was kind of a point I made. It's just like, well, depending on what your point of view is. And you're like, well, what about Nightmare on Elm Street? It's like, well, no, that's like in your dreams coming true that's supernatural. That steps outside of our reality. That bends our reality. And that's what creates the fear. But Battletoads, that a sentient frog, they're just like, yeah, that's my cousin Phil.
I think Dragon Warrior may be a better example where like a concept of a sentient slime monster is terrifying to us, but literally every time the people in Dragon Warrior walk outside is like, oh, look, there's a blue slime.
Yeah, and they like think they're cute. They also drew them as cute as possible.
Why did we kill them? It makes no sense. They're barely any threat to us. It's like if you went outside and just started killing rabbits. Just like, God, I fucking hate rabbits. They could technically damage me if they were angry at me.
Do you feel like the slimes are akin to like the snakes in Whacking Day in The Simpsons? They're just like, it's Whacking Day. Let's kill all the slimes.
I don't know. I can't imagine the Dragon Warrior lore, Johnny. I have played exactly one Dragon Warrior.
Oh, play some more. Play 3.
Yeah, I kind of want
3's fun because it incorporates part 1.
Ooh. Dude, nothing better than a sequel that includes a level from the first game or like calls back directly to the first game. God, I love that shit.
Yeah.
Castlevania does it like a few times. Oh, so good. Every time.
Yeah. Love it. Love it. Anyways, that's it. That's the whole list. We went through, and I'm sorry if that was too numbersy or if we didn't talk enough about finances on these games. And I just mainly I want to clarify my criteria as we go through in the future. We can star this episode and listen to the first 30 minutes again every year because I will be doing it again.
Johnny, The Hunt for Red October.
Horrific. A true Halloween game if ever there was
one. So when I look for just like I look for new horror movies all the time. And a movie that comes up a lot is Threads, which is basically just I know Threads. It's not really I guess I don't know how realistic it is, but it's a depiction of what would happen in like average town in the UK if global thermonuclear war happened. And you got the blast, a lot of people die, they're survivors, and then the survivors die. Very hopeless movie. But it is horror. So, Hunt for Red October, that's kind of like one of the worst things that can happen. Literally, I don't know the plot of Hunt for Red October, by the way. I think it's not really about nuclear war, is it?
I think it's terrifying in a different way. And yes, it's horrible, but it's not horror in the same way.
Is it more of a cat and mouse? What do I get it mixed up with? I don't know. I don't know. Is it a cat and mouse between multiple submarines? Is that what the Hunt for Red October is?
I believe that is accurate. I haven't seen Hunt for Red October since I saw it in the theater. I preferred the sequels.
Okay.
Games and those ones had Harrison Ford. So, like, what do you want?
I wanted to find an NES game that more directly deals with nuclear war. I think the one of the Odyssey 2 board games, I don't even remember the name of it, that might technically deal with that. And I want to consider whether that counts as a horror game. But no, all right, I'll say Hunt for Red October doesn't count. But Johnny, hot collecting tip that you're not going to hear anywhere but Collector's Quest. The Hunt for Red October would be the first video game appearance of Jack Ryan.
Yes, it would. Predates the movie.
There you go.
How you like that?
All Fun fact. Of the Ryan verse out there.
I just want to make it clear. Tyler found out that fact, not me. I'm dropping it on you, but that's a Tyler fact.
Yeah. There's some people out here like, oh yeah, I got Rainbow Six. That's the first appearance of Jack Ryan. No, it's Hunt for Red October and NES. Come on. Get out of here.
Yep. Anyways, we did it, Tyler. Any other ones you want to throw out?
Halloween games. We ever going to do an episode that's not on NES?
Yeah, next year when we do this and it's about Super Nintendo.
I thought you were going to say Famicom, but all right.
I mean, look, the next episode we lean into stuff that is definitely not just going to be NES.
Johnny, should we move on to the second part of the show?
I think we should. I think it's time. Unless you want to keep talking Halloween stuff, I'm happy to do it.
I found a bloody Barbie foot that's been in my front garden for a while, and I never noticed. Because I put out and take in my Halloween decorations, and last year I must have missed like a bloody Barbie foot. So every time someone delivers a package, I just got a
They're
bloody
just like,
Barbie foot there.
they're like, what is wrong with this psychopath? That's excellent.
I'm looking.
Get us a collector's question.
Chefish asks, have you ever traveled somewhere and found yourself wondering what is the coolest / rarest item someone has that they're totally unaware of in terms of value?
I'm not sure. Why does this apply to travel?
I don't know. I guess if you like go to a new city and you're just like, oh man, someone might have stadium events here and they don't even know. I do that, but I do that at my Goodwill. So every time I'm at Goodwill, like dropping stuff off, I have to go in because I'm just thinking like, what if today's the day? I'm not even I know they're not going to have any like, oh, a rare PS2 game I could flip for $100. Like they never have any of that shit. Goodwill is garbage. But what if it's just like they just put out the stadium events? And actually, technically, no matter where you are, you're sitting somewhere, there is a certain distance between you and someone who has like a Nintendo World Championships and doesn't know what they have. Like that's an objective distance that we just don't know what that distance is. I do think about stuff like that. Like, you know, I'm maybe like 75 miles away from a guy who would sell me a Nintendo World Championships for $100. And I just don't have that secret knowledge.
You know, I don't think I've ever thought of it quite framed like that, but I have walked into like a thrift store and places like that. And I'm like, I don't know everything, obviously, but I'm like, I wonder what the most expensive item in here actually is. Like, I wonder what thing has secret value that I don't understand. I think about that. I'm not looking for it. I just think like, oh, like what is that hidden thing that someone else might walk in and be like, aha, finally I found it. But I never think of it in terms of like, wow, stadium events might be 50 miles from me and someone doesn't know. I've never framed it that way.
Chefish, I've got that same brain that you've got. Shackfish6 asks, what's the longest you have left a package unopened? I love this question so much.
Tyler, is your clock still running on that?
It's not, but it's probably about a year. So this is probably more from like 2019, 2020 me. When I was really like finishing up sets and I was getting a lot of packages. Yeah, it would just pile up on my dining room table. And every once in a while I would like pare down the pile and open stuff up and start cleaning stuff up. But yeah, I've definitely had like the packages at the bottom that I just didn't want to deal with. Like I probably knew what was in them and I'm just like, I'll just get to it later. And yeah, I've pushed packages off for a year. I think it's because my parents came to my house at some point, so I had to move everything on the dining room table and shove it in another room. And then I just forgot about all those packages. So yeah. Don't collect video games like that. Maybe it's maybe not a great way to collect video games.
Yeah. So I had this happen. It wasn't with the game though. It was with a Lego set, and I just got it, and I don't know what was happening, but it was probably around a Christmas rush in maybe like 2017 or something. And like, so we're getting a bunch of stuff, and I'm like taking decorations in and out, and I just shoved it in the garage, and then it got like pushed in between two shelves. It like fell, and I never noticed because I was never looking for that. And yeah, when I cleaned my garage this year, I found it. I was like, what the hell is this? I opened it up. I'm like, oh, this little Star Wars set. What are you doing here? So, yeah.
See, you forgot it. Mine was more like a consciously procrastinating that like I don't want to deal with opening packages. Oh, I gotta like deal with the packaging materials. Someone might have used fucking styrofoam bits, packing peanuts. Like, God, if you use packing peanuts, like, why do you hate everyone? I don't understand. How hard is it to use bubble wrap?
Let's get into packing in a second. But I did have a package that I lost out on an auction for. I was like, a seller was selling two things, and I was the underbidder. So I was only getting the thing that I was only buying because it was like a good deal if I was getting shipping like with it. And it came, and I knew what it was, and I left it in the box for like 4 months because I didn't feel like opening it. I was like,
listen, we get the dopamine from buying the thing. Getting it, it's like a hassle. I got to clean it. I got to put it on a shelf. Like, oh my God, I got to organize it, sort it, put it in some kind of document. Who has the time?
No one. No one. Let's talk about people who are monsters, though, since we're on the Halloween theme. I don't know what's wrong with people. And if this is like, if you're listening to this and this is part of your brain, adjust yourself immediately. Don't take a game and pack it in a bubble mailer or a plastic bag and then tape like a styrofoam or a cardboard cage around it and think that is okay.
People are so dumb. Yeah.
Like, do you understand how crushing works? Like, do you understand what the crisp right angles of a box do for weight distribution? Like, they're like, that game came crushed, but I wrapped it in bubble wrap and put cardboard around it. I'm like, yeah, but it had no structure. So if I put something heavy on it, what do you think happens? It just flattens. Like, don't be this person. Stop that. Also, it doesn't save money because once it's over a certain size, it's a parcel no matter what you do. Just put it in a fucking box. What is happening? I feel like I take crazy pills every time this happens, and it hadn't happened in a while. And I bought a stupid game, which I'll reveal momentarily. And it came, and they did that, but they also taped around the cardboard, and the tape hit the fucking box, and then obviously peeled part of the art off. I was just like, and the game wasn't that expensive, so it's like, what do I got to go fight them now? Do I feel like making a whole case out of this? It is very annoying. Don't do this. So, anyways,
I hate shipping. Please buy things from me. I don't sell anything, but when you buy things from me, I'll ship it like you're a king and I'm shipping your son inside a box. That's the way everyone should ship things to collectors, Johnny.
Yeah, I have this giant 20-inch PVM that I want to get rid of, and I'm like, Tyler could ship this somewhere because it would arrive safe with the way Tyler ships. I'm not confident in myself. I have to get rid of this PVM. Someone needs to come buy this giant PVM from me, please. But it's got to be local. It can't be shipped.
Johnny, I'm going to go for one more. Berserker said, I actually lost my place and I don't have it up anymore. But he basically said that he listened to one of our longer episodes, the box rating episode. That must have been like one of the 4-hour episodes. And he said, it's okay if you split an episode up into 2 parts. No one will mind.
It's okay if you just don't finish it in one sitting. Is my counter.
We probably complained about how long the episode was, and that's why he's saying that.
Probably. That's
yeah, but by the time we start, there is so much fluff to content in Collector's Quest. Like, we couldn't handle splitting an episode up into multiple parts. Can you imagine having to listen to a whole nother intro and outro just to finish another half of the content in one of our episodes? Like, what if we split up this Halloween list into a 2-parter?
That would be terrible.
Yeah, I know. No, we like making long episodes. Like, obviously, there are podcasts that are much more focused and prepared and intelligent and content filled. But we like our style, I guess. That's why we've been doing it for many, many years.
We bloviate, right? We talk too much and too long on things that could definitely be more concise. We're not those people.
It is not a concise noise show.
Yeah. If you were a trucker, we are the show for you. We got
shout a long haul route. Dude, we love truckers.
We sure do. Not like that, though. I mean, maybe Tyler does. I don't know. Anyway,
I don't know what
Tyler,
like that means, but all right.
I think you know what that means. Rest Stop Charlie over there.
Johnny, what are you buying? What are you playing?
You want to know what I'm buying and what I'm playing? Tyler, I went to go play Zelda. I was going to play the new Zelda. I was very excited to play it. I got it Thursday night. I was like, okay, I don't really have time, but I'm like, I'm ready. I'm ready to play this. And then a lot of company drama happened at my work. And then I was very stressed out. And when I'm stressed out like that, I don't want to play games because I don't want my external stress to affect how I feel about a game. It was like, that was kind of hard during COVID, right? Because I felt a lot of external stress. So I had to could only play games that I were kind of already familiar with. I didn't want to play Last of Us 2, for instance, because I didn't want it to taint my image of it. I had to wait until I'd settled down a little bit. Um, but yeah, so I wound up holding off on that, and I didn't play anything because I just sat there in a stress state and like was worried that like I didn't watch Rings of Power for that reason. I didn't watch some other shows. I just didn't want my view tainted by my stress level at the time. So I did not play anything. I bought plenty of stuff that's like finally come in. The game that I was talking about that was damaged and was like annoying was Clive Barker's Undying. So that's pretty cool, right? I like all the Halloween games I'm going to post all month long were all things that were just recently bought too. I just showed off several on Instagram and TikTok and some on YouTube. I'm less good at posting at YouTube. I should be better, but
well, those are the only ones I see, Johnny. Every time you see you have one like on a YouTube short, that's me. Just saying hi to you. I'm the only one following you on YouTube.
I do appreciate you following me on YouTube, and I try to post the videos on YouTube so you can actually see them. But I bought like Uzumaki. That was one of the ones I bought. So, and I bought that Zelda. That's what I bought and what I didn't play.
All right.
What about you?
Well, Johnny, I lost a bunch of auctions, which is fine, because then the next time I'm basically saving up some money, and then the next time I buy something is going to be something big, because I keep losing auctions for cool stuff. Nothing's hitting my save searches. Heritage did recently have some Atari stuff up, and there were two games I wanted. They had a near mint condition sealed, or I guess unopened because it didn't have a seal, Frankenstein's Monster on Atari 2600. A game both of us really like as a game and as a collectible. This game is hard to find in nice condition CIB, and is a pop 1 of 1 sealed at all, let alone the fact that it's in near mint condition. So it's like basically the best copy of Frankenstein's Monster on Earth. And I wanted it. And there were a couple other people who also wanted it and recognized it. It was like the second most expensive thing that sold in the auction or something. It went for like $1,400.
That's crazy. I didn't know if that many people would recognize it. I'm surprised that the secret got out. I'm kind of glad people recognize it, but I'm sad that you didn't get it.
I mean, I think there's some contingent of people that a lot of like this random B+ tier uncommon stuff. I would unfortunately put Frankenstein's Monster into B+ tier uncommon stuff. It's rare, unopened, but like, who cares?
I mean, Atari stuff has a whole different rarity scale too. Like some stuff is like,
but like all of it went for like $1,000. Like it was very consistent prices across the like uncommonish rare stuff. And it makes me think, like, how many bidders are really here? Is it just, like, 2 Atari guys and, like, one guy has a limit of, like, I only spend, like, $1,000 for these B+ games? I don't know. It felt a little bit like that to me. Anyway, I didn't win that. And then the other thing I wanted was Wabbit for Atari 2600, which is... I know it as the first game with a named female protagonist. This is something I have looked into very deeply, the history of female protagonists. I need to start a blog. I have some of these like video game sage posts that like, who cares? It's on video game sage. I need to start a blog with just like some of my research like this. I do think that Wabbit is the first female protagonist that actually has a name. Which does make it a fairly interesting game. And then Heritage also advertised it very funnily as one of the first games with farming simulation elements.
Oh my goodness.
So this is it's an arcade game where like an animal is trying to steal your carrots. To say it has anything to do with farming simulation is insane. Anyway, I was
kind of crazy.
I was the underbidder on that, which made me really sad because I think that's a pop 0 technically. I don't think that's on any of the company's population reports. So that's a rare game sealed, and this one was in mint condition. Anyway, it would have been cool to have a Wabbit. I have one complete box, but I feel like I'm more upgrading stuff than going after new stuff, just because like the new stuff I want at this point doesn't come up, and I'm not working on any sets, so it's cool to get some upgrades. Johnny, I've been playing Danganronpa, and it's fine, and it's a visual novel. It's a lot of pressing the A button to advance text, and things don't happen very fast because visual novels are just slow. Like every single visual novel I've ever played is slow. And for whatever reason, I'm in this headspace where I just want to play more visual novels. It's like a genre, like I'm not super in depth. Like if it's a genre I haven't dug into that much, it's great because you can just look at like what are the best visual novels ever made, and then you get to play like all the best stuff that's ever been made. So you just get to like do all the hits, and you can ignore all like the weird hidden gem shit. Are visual novels just like strictly worse than manga? Like
I think
everything about it is worse. I have to press a button to keep continuing. It literally tires out my finger to play them. And you could put them in an auto mode where it like will automatically play the text for you, but it's like never at the exact right speed that you want it. So you always end up waiting a little bit after you finish the text. It just... And there's no art. It's always just like the same character sprites looking at each other, where every single volume of manga is like this amazing work of art. And it might not have color, but it's so much more visually interesting than watching these little character sprites shuffle around the screen. Calling it a visual novel, it's like, man, we're talking about the barest amount of visual art that these have. Like Danganronpa has to be like maybe the most visually interesting visual novel that I played in terms of how much it just like flashes the screen and shakes the screen at you. It like really wants to make you feel like shit's happening when these characters are just talking. And like there's still so little actual art. Like obviously when something really big happens, they have to draw a scene. So like, oh shit, someone died or something like that. But man, I I don't think I like visual novels. I feel like I'm just going to read all the manga for all the stuff I'm interested in.
Yeah. I mean, it's also visual novels feel like stepping backwards a little bit. You're just like, oh, I'm playing a text adventure all of a sudden. What happened?
The other thing I don't like about them is that they have like these adventure game elements, or like a lot of them are basically like choose your own adventure. And the purpose of the game is that it's a choose your own adventure, but you're supposed to find every path. So there's no...
It's not really an adventure.
Like,
it's a collect 'em up.
Yeah, you don't define your own experience. You're supposed to see where all the branches led to, because you're supposed to collect every ending. And it feels like, so what was the point of my choices? It's not really that I had choices. It's that you want me to see how cool the story would be if you gave me choices, which you didn't really, because I'm supposed to experience both ways every time. I don't know, man.
Yeah. I'm with you. That's a very good explanation, Tyler. I like that a lot.
I don't know, man. I'm gonna keep playing. I'm gonna play like one more after Danganronpa to see if I think like maybe they can have something better than manga. I think Clanad is like a really classic 90s one. I think that's what I'm gonna play. I think it's like 90 hours long. Fucking Jesus Christ.
I mean, if you want to get into some visual novels, I have some suggestions.
Oh, Nurse Love Addiction? Yeah. I bet they're all on Nintendo Switch.
They aren't. In fact, most of them are on the like PC 9801 or PC 8801.
Oh, I don't think we can import those.
Why not?
Johnny, Clanad was actually remastered and released in HD on the Nintendo Switch.
That's cool. Why aren't you interested in these games again?
Why am I or why am I not?
No. Why don't you want to know about these games I'm suggesting?
Oh, these amazing PC 98 ones? Yeah. The ones that I constantly have to scroll through when I'm just like searching for random PC games in Japan. It's like, oh man, they sure have a lot of weird hentai games over here, huh?
Yeah, that's what it all is. And that's the other, and that's what I'm kind of getting at. Is like the other part of like visual novels is it always feels like there's just such a, like if you're like, oh, I play visual novels, it's like, oh, you're one of those guys? Ooh.
It is weird. So a weird part of them, like I haven't played a ton of them, but a lot of the...
He says in defense of himself.
Slice of life narrative ones will just have like a casual sex scene in the game, but it'll be like a serious game, like a seriously written game. But then there's just like we know you're just like a teenage guy playing this, have a sex scene. And then like the Steam versions of the games sometimes take that out. And you'll see negative reviews on Steam that'll be like, the hentai scenes in this game have character building moments that were removed from the Steam version. Do not buy this on Steam. Buy it from the original publisher.
It's madness.
Anyway, this, by the way, the genre I'm trying to get into here.
Yeah. You know, you don't stand between teen boys and boobs. Let that be a life lesson. Especially not anime boobs. Hell hath no fury, like a weeb scorned.
Know enough about like the game. Like, did they already play the Japanese game and then they bought the Steam release of it? And they're like, what? There was supposed to be a sex scene here. Fuck. I wanted to experience this for real. Kasumi was really showing her love towards the protagonist in that moment. She was showing how vulnerable she was.
I didn't buy this large anime pillow not to have this sex scene in this game. Yeah, anyways, Tyler, ridiculous. You're an adult man. I don't know if you're allowed to play visual novels.
I'm allowed to play visual novels. Because you know what, Johnny? Johnny, you might have
You're
heard.
also allowed to play Square Enix games from 1984, but should you?
Johnny, I like some sad movies. And there's all these like weird visual novel genres. And like one of the visual novel genres, I forget exactly what it's called, but it's just supposed to be like, this game is meant to make you feel very sad. Yeah, I want to read some of the. Apparently, Clanad is really sad, and it's like a classic one. And I had the guy next to me. I had a very, very strange guy. The guy who was definitely that guy, and like maybe was a little bit of a social outcast next to me in college. Had his room decked out in Clanad stuff, and. It makes me interested. Like, how could you get into a game that looks like it's exclusively about sad high school girls?
That guy definitely has an anime girl as his profile picture.
Oh, are you kidding me? Of course he does.
Yeah, and he's got a Diamakara for sure. He's definitely got sexy figures all over his room. Ugh. I mean, these are unfair stereotypes, but I mean, you guys all know the type.
They're not. Oh, I didn't tell. Okay, all right. Speaking of unfair stereotypes, there's like a stupid nerd guy in Danganronpa, and one of his lines in the game is. Oh, did I already tell this on the last episode?
No, you did not.
One of his lines in the game. He has like a throwaway line to end a conversation. He's like, anyway, let's go over the history of video games. Part 1, Ancient Mesopotamia. And I'm like, fuck, they put me in a video game.
Oh, man. You are an archetypical nerd. Congratulations.
I love it.
Yeah. All right, Tyler,
you know,
did
nerd's
we do
just
it?
another word for expert, Johnny. Really, you're making fun of me for being an expert in my areas of interest.
Okay. No one's making fun of you. Settle down. Put your retainer back in and go back to your video games. Anyways, are we done? Did we do it?
That's
I've
it.
said anyways like 4 times. We did this episode, Tyler. Hooray.
Yep.
Hooray. So, guys, I want to thank you all for bearing with us and hearing my ridiculous Halloween nonsense. Thanks to everyone who supports us on Patreon and on our Discord. We love you guys, and if you want to be part of that, ask us questions, you can join our Discord by going to Patreon at patreon.com/collectorsquest for $4, and then you also get our bonus episodes. But the main thing you get is getting on our Discord and hanging out with all the best people who are collecting games right now and are weirdos like us. So come do that if you want, or if you don't, just keep doing what you're doing. We appreciate you nonetheless. All right, that's it. We did it. Bye!